Very, very pleasant morning to you. Welcome once again. You're inside of the Africa Forum. It's Running African. My name is Kabu Ma'atkiru. My producer this morning is Joy Morgan, and we'll be with you until 10 o'clock this morning. That's when it will be time for the Sunday Sunshine. Understand that the man DJ Wayne is in this morning for the big game. And he goes through until 2 o'clock. Thank you so much, Digital Chris, for doing the honors while we were out. And we've got to explain that a little later on. But we took a short leave because we simply had to. But we're back, and it's all live this morning. Reuniting the African family for development. Bearing witness, demanding change. Developing an African-centered agenda for change and development. One of the things we do here is to blaze new paths towards Africa's rendezvous with destiny. Good morning to you. We've got an interesting program lined up for you as usual inside of the Africa Forum this morning. Lots and lots happening in the Pan-African community, lots and lots happening in the global environment, and we're going to be getting into all of that this morning and then some. But just a quick look at what we've got coming up inside of the program this morning. In a little while, we'll be joined in the studio by my very, very special guests, Rastafari elders and Rastafari youths and not so young will be joining me in the studio to continue the conversation on the decriminalization and legalization of ganja in Jamaica. We're looking this morning particularly at Rastafari's perspective. So Dr. Jeelani Niah, lecturer in the Institute of Caribbean Studies at the University of the West Indies, will join me live in the studio. I'm on Black. Members of the Running African family will recall that Ayman Black, one of the earlier family members of Running African, is now Chancellor of the Rastafari University of Higher Life Learning, and he'll tell us about that once he comes in, because I'm quite sure many of you are hearing about the Rastafari University, and that's deliberate. We'll tell you why we're saying that, University. For the first time, he's also a football expert and an author. Ayman Black joins me in the studio. Elder, we call him a priest around here. Prof I is joining me live in the studio. Ras IV, who is a co-chair of an Ibingi House, chair of the Coral Gardens Committee, and Chair for Westmoreland Hemp and Ganja Farmers Association. Joining me also in the studio and from the House of Dread, Ras Perty is live in the studio this morning. And then later on in the program, we're going to be talking to consultant microbiologist and assistant lecturer Dr Glen Cambell about Chickungunia. Lots of conversations. You'll recall that just 2.5 years ago actually, in this forum I spoke with a microbiologist, a virologist actually, regarding the likely outbreak of Chickungunia in Jamaica. Just 2.5 years after, there is an outbreak, and the question is, why weren't we prepared when we were already on alert? So we're going to be talking about Chickungunia this morning. And then later on, as you know, we're gearing up and preparing for the anniversary of the Million Man March. Minister Louis Farrakhan will be heading into Jamaica along with members of the Nation of Islam, and the anniversary celebrations, the activities will take place at the National Arena on October 19. This morning, Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad, National Assistant to the Honourable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and son of the Most Honourable Elijah Muhammad, will be joining me on the phone lines to talk about the 19th anniversary of the Million Man March. One thing you should know, we're going to be broadcasting live from the National Arena on the 19th of October. The guest speaker and the main speaker then will be Minister Louis Farrakhan. So we're coming to you live on the 19th from the National Arena. We ask you to join us there from 6 a.m. until... And still later on in the program, as we told you, it's a very packed program this morning. Managing Director of the Water Resources Authority is Mr. Basil Fernandez. He joins me on the line to talk about watersheds in Jamaica. We want to look at the Roaring River and Duns River watershed. Well, they're telling us that it's not identified as a Roaring River and Duns River watershed. It's identified as the Rio Bueno watershed. But we have to talk about watershed because within the context of China in Jamaica, and we have to talk about watersheds within the context of the Great Land Heist. But really, the Managing Director of the Water Resources Authority will be talking specifically about watersheds this morning, the environmental concerns in the watershed area, protection and management of the watershed, sources of these rivers, and the current usage and so on. We'll tell you more about that later on this morning. The National Commission on Reparations, as you know, the reparations report has been tabled in Parliament, and Vice Chair of the Reparations Commission, the CARICOM Reparations Commission, and Chair of the Reparations Commission here in Jamaica, Professor Vereen Shepard, will be joining me later on this morning on the phone lines also. Professor Shepard is also the Chair of the UN's United Nations Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent. She's author of many texts used in schools and universities, and also of I Want to Disturb My Neighbor, Lectures on Slavery, Emancipation, and post-colonial Jamaica. She's also head of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies. So we'll be joining Professor Shepard this morning on the phone lines to talk about the report from the National Commission on Reparations. A whole lot more to come. In between that, of course, the music and so much more. You're inside of the Africa Forum, Running Africa, and we go through until 10 o'clock. A quick break and we'll be right back with much more. Of the Africa Forum, Running African, and want to tell you a little bit about some of the events that have been unfolding here in Jamaica, but also across the world. And one of the things that we've been noticing is really China in Jamaica. We want to talk a little bit about the plans that we have been hearing about. China making a proposal to acquire the Roaring River lands. This is very, very interesting, very important for us to delve into. This is one of the reasons why we're talking about watersheds in Jamaica this morning. In the meantime, though, this is not the one we want. Going to be hearing from Prof I from the album Ayabingi Redemption. And isn't it interesting, though? Isn't it interesting that just ahead of Congo Week, just at the time when the attention of the world is being directed to the illegal mining in the DRC, just at the time when the attention of the world is focused on the way the mercenaries from Europe and the United States are fanning the flames of discontent in the DRC, that when the attention of the world is being focused just around the time when we're saying, look at the Democratic Republic of the Congo, look at what the multinational conglomerates are doing in the DRC, that just at that time we're hearing from so-called researchers in Britain that the HIV virus actually originated in the DRC. Now, this is to divert attention away from our focus on the illegal mining, the complicity of European and American governments in what's happening in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, blood diamonds and all. One of the things that the research could not hide, though, and that we're very, very careful to point out, is the fact that even though they have identified that the HIV virus miraculously started in the DRC, that it is somehow connected to the Belgians, to Belgium in the Congo, to the Europeans in the Congo, to the building of a railway and the train lines, you name it. So we can't get away from it. Isn't it interesting that you point to Africa and you point to the Africans? You point to Africans on the continent of Africa as responsible for spreading the HIV virus in your research. And I don't care where it was done, whether it's Oxford, Cambridge, you name it, I do not give, I don't care. Because to me, there's another way to interpret that report, a very, very simple way to interpret that report. And once a report points to the Belgian in the Congo, once a report points to Belgium in the Congo, then it seems to me that you should have your report. In interpreting that, your report should have pointed out that the HIV virus might have traveled to the Congo with the Belgians. Ever thought about that? That is a likely interpretation of that research. And I haven't even read it all. That's a likely interpretation. Just glossing over that doesn't make any sense. And then again, there's a patent on the HIV virus. So we got to go back to the lab one way or the other. Lots of talks about viruses, lots of talks about diseases, and that also is a diversion. And of course, these diseases are serious. Ebola is a serious disease. Chickungunia is not a joke. The enterovirus D68 is not a joke. Those diseases are here. How they got here? That's another situation. But that is not even so much the point. The point is that we must become multifaceted, and we are multidimensional people. We are complex, and our attention cannot be so chick-verted and Ebola-verted and diverted away from all the other stuff that's happening around us. Palestine, the aftermath of the bombing of Palestine, we clean up or not. We're looking also, and we're looking away because our attention is being diverted away from the fact that Ethiopians Ethiopians, West Sudanese, and others in Israel are being shuttled into concentration camps. We're not paying attention to that, but that's something that we should be talking about. Our attention as Pan-Africanists cannot be so diverted, cannot be so chick-verted that we are not paying attention to what else is happening around us. Another thing that we're not paying attention to is the economic situation here in Jamaica. We're not necessarily paying attention to that. We're not paying attention to the crime situation. You're calling for the head of the Minister of Health. But interestingly enough, poverty, crime and violence are killing more people in Jamaica than Chickungunia. So whose head should we call for is the question. So balance the thing. Let's balance the thing. So the point is that our attention is being chick-verted, and one of the things that we need to do is to come back to our senses. All right, another thing that we haven't been paying much attention to, which we have to shed some light on, is China in Jamaica. And while we talk, it's interesting that while we talk about Chickungunia, to the extent that we're talking about Chickungunia, we have missed, and China is sneaky and cheeky, and the Jamaican government is just as cheeky and sneaky, that while our attention is being diverted by Chickungunia, that China has submitted a proposal for lands in the Roaring River area. We have to talk about that. What are we going to tell our children about their future when we give away the land? That's a question. Let us, no matter how sick you are with Chickungunia, whatever it is else that you have, there is something happening around us. It is done in the way of the Angola model, which we have been talking about for many, many moons now. And understanding China in Jamaica is to understand China in Africa, which is the Angola model, really, which we see unfolding here in Jamaica. And our point is we're not coming from a point of imperialism. No, do not preempt me. We've never come from that. We're not coming from a point of neocolonialism. We're not coming from that. We are talking about leveraging. How do we leverage Jamaica-China relationships so that there is a win-win for both? In the Angola model, China says it's a win-win for China and a win for Angola. It's a win-win for China and a win for Ethiopia. It's a win-win for China and a win for whatever else African country, and they're all over Africa. Okay, fair enough. They're coming in with the bulk of the money. So what of Jamaica? To what extent are we leveraging Jamaica-China relationships? And to what extent do we continue to give away the land? These are some of the issues that we're going to be talking about as time goes by. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going into the first discussion segment of the program, and the Rastafari elders and not so elders are in the house. Going to be talking about we're joining in actually and continuing the conversation. He is a member of the House of Dread and is in the studio with us also. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the program. All right, let me just get your microphones all on. Thank you very much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum this morning. We're going to jump in right at the beginning, because actually the latest development is where we're starting, which is a beginning right now. And the latest move from the government of Jamaica. I want to start there to just get your own impressions, your own ideas as to how you're viewing this. We're going to start with you, Ras IV. What's your reaction and response to government's latest move, which it seems is to decriminalize a small amount of the possession of a small amount of ganja?
Okay, well, let me answer first greetings in the name of His Majesty Selassie and in the name of our Empress and and greetings to all the listeners, nationally and internationally.
All right, Abby, I'm going to stop with you because your microphone, I think, that's not the one we're using. So in the meantime, while we get your microphone going, let me just get the response from Prof I. Prof I?
Yes, one love, Rastafari, Selassie the First. Well, small amount. If a man was to plant one herb tree, it wouldn't be small amount to what the government wants us to have. But I and I as Rasta always say herb legal. We never have fear either for go jail, get beaten, shot, anything. We always deal with herb because herb is a part of I and I. Some of it as sacrament. I don't see it as sacrament still. I just see it as a vegetable to I and I. You know, so certain things what the government is talking about, I really don't support it. Like, I don't see how license come into having ganja, and if you don't have that means if you don't have a license, still going to go to jail or what? You know, and if it's gonna be licensed, who's gonna get the license? Is the people who's gonna get the license? You have to have land. Or what? Or we are just trying to adopt some American principles that them have over there. And when we plant this herb now, if it's small, how can you just plant small amount? One herb tree is a whole pound of herb or 2 pounds sometimes.
It's a very important point, and you have raised two very important points there, Prof I. One, how do you, what's the requirement for licensing? Do you have to own land?
Yes.
And that, I think, is a crux of the matter. That's the first thing. And the second thing, small amount, I think they gave the quantity, possession. Is it 2 ounces?
Yeah, 2 ounces and below.
All right, we're definitely having some problems with Ivy's microphone, one way or the other. But, so these are two important concerns for you going ahead.
Yes.
Prof I. All right, while we get Ivy's microphone working, Ras, Perty?
Blessed love.
Yeah, greetings, my brother. Your own response to this latest development from government.
The first thing I do is call to memory or to your attention the fact that the criminalization of ganja was what was used to criminalize and destroy the lives of hundreds and thousands of Rastafari people. For one spliff, you would have received 7 years. For one chalice, 7 years. In one incident, you could be held and receive 14 years. To run away, or to attempt to run away, you could die. Those memories are not pleasant. And when we see the hypocrisy that now surrounds these debates, several questions come up. What kind of structure are they going to apply to it? How come you're going to decriminalize a small amount of herb for personal use? And people who have suffered all these atrocities, what part are they going to play? Is the license for herb going to be tied to the amount of land you own? Other questions now arise as to why are we so far behind the ball? Uruguay and Israel. Israel has patented 423 compounds out of marijuana. And we note the action of Uruguay in commercializing recreational, medicinal, industrial. And other nations are boasting about how much money they're going to make this year. Where is Jamaica? Why are we so slow on the ball?
All right, we're going to pick that up later on in the program. Very, very good points being raised here, which are some of the same questions that we have been asking ourselves in this space once we heard that the government had announced the plans, and this was from June, to decriminalize. Rastafarians and many others have been asking decriminalization as opposed to legalization. Shouldn't this be the conversation? And Ras IV, you as a chair for the Westmoreland Hemp and Ganja Farmers Association, what's your views?
I'm over here now. Are you hearing me?
No, grab Prof I's microphone for a minute there. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Rastafari greetings, you know. Now, in the first place, when we hear the term decriminalize, automatically we're thinking about all right, small amount where one can use that one will not be charged for. But I want to make it very clear, Harbour, that this decriminalization and this proposal, right, because it's not law, it's a proposal, something that had been introduced into discussion into the House, but it's not yet law. But what, in terms of the tones and the less than tones, is not that you won't be charged for it, you know. And I want people to get this very clear, because people see me and say, I have the, so we can walk up the road and all with that. It's not that you won't be charged for it, it's just that it become a non-arrestable offense. But it's not that you won't be charged for it.
In other words, it's considered a minor offense.
A minor offense.
And offense is the word minor or major. It don't make no difference.
Right.
An offense is an offense.
Right. And the point is, I mean, normally now, you're called for that spliff or, you know, a little dry herb and you go to the court, you pay 100 or 200 or 300. No, what will be the fine? Because you're going to get a ticket now, like a car ticket. Is it going to be 500, 1,000, 2,000? And is this a next way for the government to make more money out of poor people? Is it a next way for poor people to continue to bear the burden wherein you have other people enjoying the fruit, the labor, and the sacrifices of these very people? Like, for example, the whole issue of license come up. Right? I being a part of the Westmoreland Hemp and Ganja Farmers Association, which is the first Ganja Farmers Association to get set up in the island, we are agitating for Rastafari and grassroots people who have paid the price, who have made the sacrifice. These are the people who any license to be given. These are the people who should be given license. Because they're the ones who have sacrificed, who have gone to jail, gone to prison, get the button lick, who have made sure that this industry have kept alive. To the point now that government want to negotiate and government want to implement laws following in the footsteps of Colorado, Washington, and so on and so on. So but at the same time...
So what I hear and from all the panelists so far is that you are not satisfied, nowhere near satisfied.
No.
With this latest...
No. As a matter of fact, I go further than say not being satisfied. I think that this is a fraud. This is a conspiracy to continue to exploit poor people. That's how I see it.
And this is also your perception of the whole thing, Prof I. This is how you're seeing that there is a greater conspiracy here, coming especially on the heels of the Mario Dean situation and the foment that's happening in the country right now from a lot of Jamaicans, including Rastafarians, who are standing up strongly now to say, listen, there must be action on decriminalization, legalization, that really and truly this is a piecemeal from government.
Yes, well, first thing, I don't subdue myself under government law because I've been to jail so many times for ganja. If they are going to give out license, I will continue to go to jail for ganja. I do not, and I will never support this license because you see when you're licensed, you're under their system. They can twist you and turn you and tell you when to move, what to do, and you go and sign up yourself. You know, Marcus Garvey said, Haile Selassie said, be careful of your sign. So his sign and wanted to sign to their system. So you become under the slave. Because it's many different ways to slave our people. I refuse to be a slave under these people with their license. And no, I will all... So much brethren dead, so much go to prison, so much, so much things happen to Rasta over the year that I just don't believe in this license.
And in a little while, we want to talk about those struggles, Prof I. Our brother Jeelani Niah, Dr. Jeelani Niah, has joined us in the studio. Jeelani, and I know you have had your immediate response already to the latest developments from government, Parliament, and the proposal to decriminalize a small amounts of possession of small amounts of ganja.
Yes. Good morning, Sister Cambell, and greetings to the Africa Forum family. Yes, good morning to my fellow Palinist elders, Rastafari. it's the timing of political and current events is always interesting. It's over 100 years ago that Jamaica enacted its first legislations. In 1913 was when we put it on the book. So exactly 101 year. We stopped importing and cultivating legally. And 100 years later, we're trying to export and to regularize the cultivation. In a sense, it's regretful that Don Davis isn't here because we're looking at a cultural phenomenon that's no different from his own thesis about Jamaican football. We're experiencing a period or process of industrialization of Jamaican ganja. Jamaica, though we have had a history of use and growth and high reputation for what we produce here, our process has not got into the industrialization phase.
But Jeelani, I hear where you're going, and we want to go there, but I want your immediate response to this new thing coming out of Parliament.
Yes, well, I think it is a step in the right direction. The government is now playing catch-up, and I think politically they've arrived at what they think is not offensive for the political directorate, but it's clearly offensive for those who have consistently been a part of this struggle over the decades. I'm saying in particular, in 1941, when ganja became rigorously criminalized, it was Leonard Howell and Rastafari, as Ivy and other brethren are saying, that chose to ignore that. And so we have been a part of this from the very start.
So you're saying that you see this as a positive step?
I see it as a
in the right direction is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's a positive start.
But why so tentative? Why so gradual? Is it so difficult?
Well,
what kind of step is this?
Yeah, well, that has really been the issue. We have failed to show leadership on this issue. So whereas we have an expectation internationally, our leaders don't understand the cachet which is in front of us and how to properly manage it at this time.
But if that is the case, my brother, Jeelani...
sorry, I shouldn't say not just that they don't understand. They are not necessarily prepared to explore indigenous approaches to the industrialization process.
To what extent, then, should it be Rastafari's role, and I'm going to use the word responsibility, to ensure that that is understood, and to say, hold up there now, we're not going to be dancing in the streets just because you're telling us that, 2 ounces will be decriminalized. It still remains an offense on the book. You think we're idiot. I mean, isn't it, what role should Rastafari be playing in that? As we hear from the elders in the studio, that, a conspiracy is a word that is being used. Not going with government, and so on, issues of land ownership and licensing. What is Rastafari's role in saying, hold on a minute, what you're doing is going to set us back further, because that is a consideration that we have to bring to the fore, more than assisting.
Well, that's precisely what I'm saying when we're in the early phases of this industrialization conversation. And I think we uniquely have that opportunity to open the playing field up to the smallest players, which is where ganja has always been cultivated, India, across the world. In fact, the reason for its politics is because of the absence of government capacity to control. Even when we were legislating early, the issue of how you're going to prevent people from growing and smoking this thing that they've used for generations. So we, as a community, I think, are beginning to have those conversations about coordinating our own voices, which is the important aspect. And I think programs like this, as you know, is the start of such a conversation for many of us.
And Ras Perty, I also Perty, I also heard your concerns, even while these conversations are going on, and we hear discussions on decriminalization of small possession of small amounts. Ganja fields are still being destroyed in Jamaica. The state and the police officers, the foot soldiers on the ground, I'm talking about the state now, it seems to me as if there's no translation of what's happening in Parliament. The language of the bill, I don't know what it is, but there's no translation down to the people in the streets, the people who are destroying the ganja fields.
It's painful to see the very slow response, almost lethargic, as it regards to recognizing the potential. For years upon years, the ancients have been talking in their own small way. What herb can do? You can use it to do this, that, and the other. Industrial hemp. We can make points to know it would reflect on education. If we have a problem, just for example, one small thing, with paper. The cost of paper is so prohibitive. And marijuana can provide, by fiber, enough paper to assist our educational sector. Not to talk about pharmaceuticals. Not to talk, there's also a thing called hempcrete that is used in construction. The variety of uses that have been advocated by Rastafari over the years makes you want to wonder, why is the response so slow? The Scientific Research Council, I will bet all I have that if you research the Scientific Research Council, you will see the recommendations that have been made 1959, 60, 65s. Why have they not been taken heed? Why has no one recognized exactly what it is? And if we are in such a desperate economic bind, why can no one see the great potential? Why is it that it is foreign nations who are now boasting how much billion they're going to make this year, and the suffering people of Jamaica cannot get a direction from the administrators? Is it a lack of political will, or are we obeying other people's instructions?
And that's, I think, it's a critical point to look at, because the fine print and the not so fine print of the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, and let us take this to the continent of Africa. A few years ago, I had a conversation here with a representative from the DEA who told me that there's a stepping up within the Caribbean waters, there's a stepping up within the African waters to ensure that the Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America adhere to the all these policies that are in place, all these trade deals that have been signed on to, where the fine print says that you cannot export drugs also being, ganja also being identified as such. And then the conversation coming out of the U.S. Congress, out of the White House, that even while there is talk of legalization and decriminalization within America, that for the Caribbean, we still see, millions of dollars going toward the fight against drugs, of which ganja is identified as a drug. How do we, and when do we call government on that to say to them, we know that you have signed deals, we know that these deals suggest that you cannot legalize ganja, so what are you doing until you address these deals?
What I'm seeing right now, we are the real revolutionists. We are the real warriors. Everything, I as a Rasta man, I don't subdue myself under the laws of men. Because PNP government, Labour Right government, NDM, none of them have ever done anything for Rasta. None. For Rasta children to go to school, I was one of them who have to march. For them stop sending Rasta prisons for ganja, I was one of them who march. So everything that the system have done for Rasta, say, oh, Rasta children are going to school now, man. Oh, Rasta are going to prison again for 18 months for herb. Do you think the government did get up and say, yes, we're going to do this? Is I and I march in the 70s, go for King's House with drum and chant, Niah Bingy Virgin them. I and I agitate for I and I rights for I and I need. So I see it. If I and I not continue to agitate, that means to say we subdue ourselves under their laws and their clause. What about I and I rights?
We want to pick up on that agitation. We want to pick up a little bit on the struggles that have brought us to this place right after this break about the decriminalization and legalization of ganja, the way in which it is being dealt with here by the government, by the state, and the role of Rastafari in holding the state responsible, in holding the state to its word in terms of what it plans to do. We're hearing from our panelists for the most part here that there are many, many questions that arise as a result of government's latest announcement that ganja, possession of small amounts, will be decriminalized. Question still that these are offences. It will still remain minor offences on the book. And question still of land ownership in terms of licensing. I want to go a little bit, IV, to look at the... What does ganja mean to Rastafari?
Well, ganja, herb, marijuana, kali, whatever they want to call it, it's a next part of I and I way of life, just like how the dreadnought would be a part of I and I, the aki. It's a plant. It's a natural plant. It's not something that is man-made. It's something that is created by the Almighty. And I and I as Rastafari, we use different plants for different reasons. Now, I and I can go back and look at, even from a Rastafari and the traditional people's way of life, because herb has been used historically for over 4,000, 5,000 years, long before, as you know, the culture of Rastafari, the way of life of Rastafari has always been there. Mm-hmm. But to label it or to call it Rastafari, I mean, it has always been a part of I and I life, following or walking in the footsteps and in the tradition of I and I people.
So Prof I, the idea, and this is what a lot of Jamaicans say and repeat, and we've heard that since the term since morning also, that the ganja herb for Rastafari is a sacrament, a holy sacrament. Your own views on that?
No, I don't believe in sacrament. I don't make sacrifice. See,
so what for you, as an elder Rastafari, yeah, what does ganja mean to you?
Herb is just another vegetable. I don't see it higher than greater than any other vegetable. Why it become greater and higher? Because Babylon put a price on it. If they was to put a price on another plant, the same thing higher, because Babylon put a price on it. If they was to put a price on another plant, the same thing would come out of it.
But it's to Rastafari liberty, it has become, if not a sacrament, a very important part of the liberty of Rastafari.
Yes, because the Rastaman see it as a sacrament. I am not a Christian, I'm not a Bible person, I'm not from no religion or no organization. I'm an ancient indigenous Rastaman who lived this liberty through anciency. So my anciency bring I forward even before the 5,000 years where one who could even talk about putting price and selling it and making paper and this and that, you know. I just see it as a balance, as another herb. Because if
you have mentioned Prof I, you've said you yourself, you've been to prison too many times for jail too many times for ganja.
Yes.
How was that?
Well, I always in the position of herb. So my time I don't even have position at herb. Coming from Bingi at Bamboo, and I am on this bus, and them search the bus, and them find herb, and everyone say I don't feel them herb, and the policeman say, any Rasta upon the bus? And them say, yes, man, so I don't mind one, but I'm going to jail for it same way.
All right, so that even though you yourself, you do not view this as a sacrament, not in the traditional way that many Rastafari
but I and I have been through certain tribulation and persecution for this herb. So that means if there is anything that to be achieved off it for the economy of Rastafari, because you know, say, over the years we burn money, we burn everything. So all right, we go jail, we get beaten, we lose life, this, and we always are planted, we always are agitated to have it as a medicine. Because not every man smoke. Some don't smoke, some eat it, some smoke it.
Right, and it's good for dengue fever.
Yeah, kind of medicine them have it as, you know.
And possibly Chickungunia.
Yeah.
We don't have anything coming on that yet, Chickungunia and Ganja. But we do know it works for dengue. Yeah, go ahead, Ivy. No, it works for dengue. I can testify.
Yeah, well, personally, herb is herb, you know. Say, good think Bible, busy people are used to
it's Ganja we're talking about in Ivy. It's
anyway,
not herb, it's Ganja we're talking about. Go on, yeah.
Going forward to some of your questions in terms of herb, we have to look at the herb, you know, from even a historical point of view and a world point of view. Look at it from its spiritual usages, its medicinal usages, and what the world is concerned with now, the medicinal and the economic aspect of herb. Because a lot of people don't talk about the economic aspect, and that is what is driving America to doing what they are doing in the various states. I have sat with certain ministers and have discussed, if U.S. continue to say to Jamaica government, remember you're a signatory to such and such a treaty, and isn't America a signatory to these very treaties? And are they not planting herb? So how is it? What kind of legal loophole that America can use to cultivate herb in the different states? The American government is going to say it's not a federal thing, you know, it's a state thing, but the federal, government gives go ahead, because if they didn't do that, then the different states would not have been able to do. So I'm asking
obviously
the question.
You're tapping into power differentials, because signing on to treaties, the language, I suppose, would dictate who signs, who's signing to what. So I think you're talking about a power differential there, Ivy, and it's something that we're going to pick up on when we discuss this very same topic next week. Let me just go to you quickly, Jeelani, because I think it was you earlier who had mentioned gone back to the pinnacle, and the ganja became important to Rastafari when and how, and when and can you tell us a little bit about where this idea of ganja now being a holy sacrament to many Rastafari originated?
Yeah, the connection between ganja and Rastafari is one of the earliest observations of the scholars. There are instances from in the 30s where the association with ganja and Rastafari had already been made. Now, there is a slight, let's say, contradiction or tension in the thinking of the scholars. One says that India is really the source why ganja is here, and therefore Rastafari absorbs that from India. Leonard Howell himself imports a lot of the specific paraphernalia and ritual. Bilby, who is a more maroon-trained scholar, is saying, well, Central Africans would have brought this in the 1840s. So it is likely that the Indians who arrived shortly after that met them, and it became the first commune, the first ritual thing that could be shared between these two cultural groups. Whichever it is, the idea is that the Africans were not using ganja as the Indians were, and it's therefore through that connection that it may have come, is some of the thinking. Well, if we avoid that and think more of the maroon link, and that this is a part of a global pharmacopoeia, then we are therefore saying that it is through that maroon connection that it perhaps came into Rastafari, and it is at Pinnacle itself that it became more ritualized. There are stories that elders tell you of riding to Pinnacle to buy ganja to bring back to the marketplace and sell. And Howell, I am of the impression that his global travels, just around the Second World War and before that, the cultivation of ganja across Europe and America was common. They used to plant it like grass, very close, and it would grow very tall, and that's how the textile was reaped. And I'm saying that Howell is among the first we understand to ritualize it as a part of the reasoning tradition and the music tradition. That
and explain that to us. Ritualize as a part of the reasoning tradition.
Okay. Jamaica is considered a population of chronic users of ganja. We don't just get high once a day. We are likely to use it continuously throughout the day, every day, etc. And within Rastafari specifically, you would not meet to reason and not think of offering herb. It becomes the first social sort of exchange. You know, you have herbs and everyone more or less ensures that your meditation is leveled before you start. In fact, the anthropologist claims that it was one of their rites of passage when coming among Rastafari, whether white or black, the elders would put the scholars to smoke a big spliff or to share the chalice, and their own tolerance and capacity to endure that became a part of their inclusion. So there is a kind of initiation through the chalice and the ganja as well that becomes a part of that space. So reasoning and that collective celebration process for many is inextricably linked with the qualities brought from ganja, which is considered to be spiritual.
Against that background, is it then even more important, to what extent is it so, for ganja to be legalized, even within that context, as opposed to decriminalized?
Well, which is why I
see you smiling there, Jeelani. It's not a trick question.
No, yes. Yes. Which is why I started out by saying that this is a step in the right direction. Yeah. And I'm referring to some of what you referred to about these conventions. The fact is that if you really look at what they've suggested, decriminalization is the first step, and then the clarity about religious permission is not there. But the idea is that you can claim your religious rights to have access to this herb.
That is the idea.
That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, has that been done though ever? Because this is a conversation that we've had many times.
You see, this is the point now. Now that the law is being structured, is really for us to ensure that the hammering out is functional.
What about the Church of Rastafari? I know we don't have a representative here today, but that was recently granted status as a church. The Church of Rastafari. Do you know what happens there in terms of ganja as a sacrament? Do we have any idea?
I'm not sure what their practice is in terms of their ritual work.
Yes, Ivy.
The information I got, right, is that while church was accepted, I don't know if it's lie or true, but it did not, for example, historical Rastafari has always said herb is a part of the culture.
Yes.
From a religious point of view, they use the term sacrament.
Right.
But that church did not submit herb as a part of its sacrament.
All right, we're gonna follow up on that. We're gonna follow up on that because we did have a conversation with the priest at the time. All right, Ras Perty, your own views on what you've heard so far in terms of ganja as a holy sacrament.
Rastafari have always attached themselves to deep meditation. The fact that herb is used as a vehicle to carry it to a higher state, and it does, as do other things, and makes it important to many nations, not just Rastafari alone. However, I am going to divert a little bit from your question. The spiritual thing, I am going to leave for a second, and I'm going to drive home this one. If you are elected to lead a nation of people and their economic position is not good, and you realize that your country possesses the facility to make rapid improvement in their welfare by taking the correct decisions, why is it the political will to institute the proper economic actions that it can have the proper social effect? The people of Jamaica, if you look at their lifestyle and where they are economically, it is not good. if marijuana and the proper use of marijuana can improve the nation's position, and by virtue of that, the citizens' positions, why are we moving so slowly? For example, totally off tangent, why has there been no action for 50 years on solar? It's the same thing with marijuana. It's a similar, something that can have a great effect on improving various different aspects of the life of the people. You take no action in it. What are you afraid of? Why are we moving so slowly?
At the same time that we are moving to put in place coal-fired energy, which is very, very interesting. While China is moving away from that, in China, we see that being introduced into Jamaica under the pretext of China in Jamaica. We'll take a quick break. Continuing the conversation, the debate, the discussion on the decriminalization and legalization of ganja in Jamaica. My own personal views, decriminalization is really too little and much too late. That should have happened in the 70s. We are and should be looking at legalization right now. I want to look quickly in the last 15 minutes of the program at a little bit historically and not too far back, the Coptic industry in Jamaica, because that was a burgeoning and booming industry, and I'm saying industry deliberately. So let us talk about that. How does that fit into the whole debate and conversation on the legalization and decriminalization of ganja? For our listeners, though, explain what happened with Coptic in Jamaica. We were in Egypt just recently. The Coptic churches there spent a lot of time, well, just a few years ago, spent a lot of time in the churches and so on, and mentioned ganja, but nobody recognized what we were talking about or even cared. But here in Jamaica, it was a whole other thing. Ras Perty.
The history of the Coptics' action in Jamaica is famous. These are the people that were exporting so much herb abroad. And you can look at a reverse analysis. Why would you do that if it's not economically viable? The economic viability of herb has been proven for more than 40 years. The economic viability of what it can do for raising the level of social comfort.
How did they do it, though? How did the Coptic do it? How did they manage to, in a situation where ganja was?
It was called smuggling.
Oh, that's what it was called. Networking.
It was called smuggling.
But even then, I mean, it was a public secret.
Yeah, what really happened in that time, that time in the 70s, those were the time when I was marching to King's House with our drum, agitating for free herb, because in those time it was 18 months for herb in jail. Just a spliff. I know Bridget go a prison for, patty bag. When we have herb wrap up in there, Says patty bag, them time it was a Rizla or brown bag, Yes. So while I, as a Nyabingi Brethren, was agitating for herb, they were busy smuggling. I ended up going to jail 1975 when them raided them out of St. Thomas. So they were smuggling. But I wasn't looking at the smuggling side. They was making a bag of money, but what do you think happened now? They just sending the CIA right away. And they were just smoking herb with children. Them start to video them and, right away them just shut them down. So them, I end up got jail 100 hard there from Maran Bay to Bath, 10 acre herb, Iral and a holy pie and them times. And them just mashed down everything. Then, political, one party said free, one said shop, one open the shop, one lock it. So it continues, so everything just break down.
But
it's I and I who start the agitation that even Coptic could move around freely with herb in them time, because what I'm saying that we are the government. We are the government, and if we don't agitate for what I and I want, we will never get. If we just take what them give you and say, okay, yes, I will never satisfy.
Don't settle. All right, Jeelani, hold your point. Don't forget it, because Ivy was right ahead of you. Go ahead, Ivy.
Yeah, where the Coptic is concerned, the very important thing that Prof I was pointing out, because historically, Rastafarian did not look at, on a broader basis, did not look at the marijuana, the ganja from an economic point of view. Just mostly from a, you burn your spliff or the sacramental point of view. But these people now realize the potential and had the connection. So they were able to utilize marijuana in that way and make millions and billions of dollars. Now, knowing that I and I as Rastafari have been the one more than anybody as a group who have stood up, who have borne the persecution, and who have been agitating for all these years for the legalization and decriminalization. I think right now, and I need to join forces to strengthen and ourselves to make sure that the type of unity and cut the hypocrisy and the division amongst ourselves and stand up and demand from the government what it is that I want. In 1996, I had a herb march in Kingston. In 1996, we had one in Westmoreland. In 1997, we had another one in Westmoreland. And right now, if it means that I have to take back the streets to mobilize not just the Rastafari community, but the people of Jamaica, because the people, the average grassroots people, their rights is at stake where this whole marijuana ganja industry is concerned. Because if we don't know what we're doing, some people will come and just snatch it like that.
That is a point. Go ahead, Jeelani.
Yeah, what I was saying is that the export of ganja from the 60s throughout the 70s was a major issue for the government, it going into the United States and Europe in particular. And they tried to ensure that they conform to those international pressures that said we don't want this to be exported. But at the front of this is Rastafari, which is the example of the Coptic, that the persons who chose to identify and defend this were the ones taking the risk. So even if there were big smugglers, Rastafari was located as farmer or middle man at some level. And the potential for liberation of poor people, because of the way poor people have always defended and had this as a close association, is a part of the struggle. First, it was the Indians who were lazy, according to the British, so let us criminalize the herb. And then as 1930s came and Rastafari absorbed the culture of ganja, it was that they were criminal and sexually violent.
And then just to add to your point, Jeelani, if we could get some quick comments on this. St. Anne, for example, this is not news to anyone. Ganja farming in the hills in the 70s and possibly towards the late 80s and so on. And you talk anecdotally to just a farmer who says, well, this is what I send my children to school. This is what I send me to school. So this was an industry that was, as IAV keep pointing up and Ras Perty, that the economics have been either ignored or the state has been pressured to the extent that you stifle and strangle the very thing that's keeping your economy alive.
At one point, it was the key occupation for Rastafari who couldn't find or get employment. It was the way to self-sustain and to provide for the whole network. I mean, repatriation to Ethiopia and all of that, facilitated by smuggling of herb and juggling herb. The point I was making, though, is that the government, I think, and this is where I'm saying it's not enough that they've done, efforts of nations in order to revamp themselves consistently throughout history have relied on their population coming out and planting herb. The Germans encouraged people to plant every idle scrap of land in herb because it was the only way that they could ensure that the economy would boom. I'm saying that that is the kind of deregulation that we needed. We needed to free it up to the persons who have always had access to it.
And you're saying we need it, but that hasn't been done.
Well, in a sense, the conversation that the coordination within Rastafari, I think, needs to be demanding is that as a group which has been victimized historically and defended this herb legally and illegally, whatever the status of the law is, really needs to be in the forefront of the industrialization process and the ownership as well. Now, the greater issues are how do we as a community begin to mobilize for that. But I think that is one of our basic cultural rights, given how we have created the culture around ganja, which is now a part of Jamaica's political image.
Yeah, and this is what I hear IFV talk about too, when you talk about take to the streets in terms of mobilizing, if you have to. Yes, Prof.
What I'm saying now, when we plant all these ganja, how are we going to make money off it? Is it going to go to America when them set up all, you know?
But what,
how are we going to get back money from it? Is the tourists going to come here? And what kind of herb are we going to plant?
IFV just made a point when you talk about, so when this decriminalization happens and when we're having this piecemeal on the one hand, what's happening on the other hand? Yeah. And is Rastafari then going to be the ones shoved aside, who's been at the forefront, as we heard Jeelani saying?
The legislation, though, is skewed in the direction of science and medicine, in the sense that...
And science and medicine is skewed under the name of...
Big business.
Big business and big conglomerates. And people with all different kinds of hair.
Foreign strains of ganja.
So yes.
Foreign technology.
Genetically modified ganja and so on. We haven't even talked about that yet.
Yeah,
yes, go ahead.
What I want to say is that, is it going to be organic or is it going to be ITAL?
GMO.
It's going
to be GMO. I guarantee you that. Let me talk about that. Yes.
You know, and the Rastaman will know it's going to be greenhouse.
So what does Rastafari do? Yeah. I mean, where do you go from here? How do you go forward? Coral Gardens is still on the books. No reparations for Coral Gardens. You could march until you're blue in the face. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a heck about Coral Gardens and what Rastafari suffered at Coral Gardens. I'm talking about the state. And here you have an issue of ganja. And those who are at the forefront of this issue were the very same ones who were persecuting Rastafari.
But Andrea, one of the consistent conversations I've heard from those who are trying to coordinate various fora is that this is not about Rasta right now.
Well, it has to be, but Rasta must make it about Rasta. I'm saying that
many of those who are in those positions are trying to say, well, Rasta is not about Rastafari right now, you know. It's about the national and this. But in a sense, we have been the ones who have had the science behind this culturally, and it has to always
economically,
be
politically, socially,
directive.
And all the allies.
Precisely.
Yes, Ms. Perty. Yes.
It's almost disrespectful that apparently this is a scenario. Okay, Rasta, you're bawling about your sacramental use. You take 2 ounces.
Yes.
And you satisfy with that.
Yes.
Now the pharmaceutical and the neuraceutical, you don't have any land, and you don't have the access to have refineries. So
yes. You don't have the brain and the technical knowledge.
And again,
to do the science.
As you say, brain. I call you to remember that they used to say that ganja makes you mad. All of a sudden, we're not hearing that anymore.
So what stance does Rastafari take, and what stance will Rastafari take in response to what we see happening in the debate on the decriminalization and legalization of ganja? And can you publicly take that stance right here in the studio right now? Yes, Ivy.
What stand is that, again, I go forward and say, this is something that I as Rastafari have to defend, irrespective of what is being said by whatever.
What do you have to defend? You said this is something that Rastafari have to defend. What is that?
The right to, one, having herb in a position from a religious or cultural point of view, whatever way they want to, and the fact that if I personally as a Rastaman, I see the necessity for having a regulatory framework. But I and I as Rastafari must and have to be a part of that regulatory framework. But just going forward to something...
But do you want to make a statement on what is happening so far? Because what has been announced is what is going to happen. Yes. Will Rastafari speak with one voice or even two to say, stop a minute, and we know you're doing this and this should happen, but not the way you're doing it? You know, I mean, what is Rastafari saying? And where's the voice of Rastafari to say, you know, that's a bag of bull?
Well, I'm saying this, Cabo, because just last week the announcement came, right? And I give thanks that I will be having Niah coming up in November. Looking forward that it will be at Scotch Pass, and that I can have some serious discussion. And different from the Niah we can take this discussion to the streets amongst Rastafari and group in different places, but amongst our people, because we have to mobilize. Anyhow we sit and just watch this thing unfold, it will go just like that. Because like Percy is saying, their concentration and their focus, most of these people's focus is from the economic point of view. But as Rastafari, we are also about economics. And if money is to be made from marijuana, whether medicinally, industrially, or what, why is it that I should not be?
But Prof I, Rasta has always been about the economics. Rasta has always been about the medicine and the medicinal use. Rasta has always been about the social use. So this is not something that is not known, that is unknown to the state and to those who are now leading this process to X out Rastafari out of the ganja debate.
The aspect has now changed. Now considerations are industrial, commercial, a total different picture from sacramental. A quick reflection again as to what slow response does to you. We're going to use the example of solar just for a minute. Calculating in the national bill for all prisons, all hospitals, all government agencies, it's about $33.33 billion. Light. If, just consider what amount of money you could spend on your people if you had instituted solar in all of these things, made a sacrifice that in 10 years you would begin to reap the benefit. If you had done that from 40 years ago, what would be your economic position now? Reflect that with her. No one can calculate the economic benefit that it can accrue. Who is going to guide our people in the industrial section of Herb? Who is going to open the door to assist the people to make some improvement industrially? Who's going to guide them how to make shoes?
Do you have the answer to that? To those questions?
We have always medicated ourselves. We have always researched for ourselves, and we are going to have to take a leading role in this matter.
And by we, you mean?
Rastafari. And when we agitate as Rastafari, it's not only for Rastafari, it's for everyone. So you will find amongst us, we will rise up, we will form groups who will concentrate on agitating for greater industrial access for Rastafari people. Whether as one, even though the lions within Rastafari are growling amongst themselves, in a very short while, by force of circumstances, we shall all have to come together on this point.
We have to wrap up now, yes,
right. Where we reach now. First, I refuse the GMO herb what I'm going to plant. I refuse the organic herb because I don't deal with organic. I have organic chicken, organic, I'm not, you know, I'm
Which
not
really don't mean anything, yes.
No, so you see, if you're going
we just found out
plant the herb,
we just found out that Whole Foods organic foods recently. I don't know if you heard that in the GMO debate.
I don't hear
that had a whole lot of GMO products in this organic situation.
Yeah, I don't need organic.
Yes, yes.
You know, so if we're going to provide this herb, and it's the same poison to kill the people, I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to contribute to it. You understand? We want back our ITAL 6-month herb, them we plant up a center. We don't want the second herb where, you know, them tell you, and then put this pan and tell you watch it grow. It's a poison. You understand? So all those things now, when it comes to Rasta now, defending Rasta, because I have to agitate for the best interest of Rasta. So if Rasta go gone in at the GMO and the organic and the this, I don't want to be a part of it. I talk about ITAL ancient herbs. And furthermore, when we create our herb, them and carrot go give them say, no, them no want because insect upon it and it no spray and it no this and what.
We have two things. IAV, you sit as a chair of an association that is an integral part, and you've made yourself so. Congratulations to you and the team to inject yourself and ensure that Rastafari's voice is heard. Where do you go from here?
And I continue to agitate, and we've been having dialogue with the government. We are having dialogue with other lobby groups. The next step is to...
You know what they say in South Africa about talking and dialoguing?
I don't know, but I mean...
Well, it really gets you nowhere, but go on.
Yeah, but we, as people, we have to mobilize the people. We have to talk before we can act. You know what I mean? But right now... We have to take
a stance, Ivy, even if we're sitting down, and sometimes we have to act. And enough has been said already.
Yeah,
don't let it be done.
But right now, our plan is to mobilize our people, is to go parish to parish, all the towns, whatever we have to do.
I agree with you,
But personally, the time is short, but there's a lot I would like to say about the strains and the medicinal aspect of this and that.
Well, we're picking up on that in a later program.
Right.
All right, Jeelani, I'm giving you the last word on this.
Yeah, at this point, I think... it would be a good and correct step for the national directive to make some kind of apology to the Jamaican folk, ordinary folk who have suffered because of the criminalization of ganja, particularly to Rastafari. Barry Evans puts it nicely that the culture of Rastafari has been criminalized when ganja becomes a sacrament. Now, when ganja is illegal, you criminalize the very culture at its heart. So in a sense, our community needs some kind of catharsis, especially since much of what had been claimed is now being disproven, as, you know, we were clearly right. At the next level, I think that there really needs to be national consultation with those people who have grown ganja and traded it as a first step. I don't think we should be talking...
That is not happening?
Well, it's happening in various ways through associations, but I'm not aware of a national consultative approach. What I mean by this is you've had people for 80 years cultivating a product, and you're now going to industrialize, and your first consultation is with those people who are running from outside to offer you markets. You've not started to speak to your farmers. You don't know what kind of preparedness they have. You don't know what their capacity is, and you're not even seeking to empower them. You're really seeking to give the foreign investor the same way you gave away bauxite, etc. So I think,
and the same way you're giving away our land.
Precisely. Even before we get into the nuts and bolts, there really needs to be an engagement with the smallest common denominator, whatever the mathematics.
Yes, I understand exactly what you're talking about, Jeelani, and I think it's a brilliant point. I didn't know that wasn't happening, that there wasn't a national consultation with ganja farmers, that persons who have, and with Rastafari. I know that, you know, there are activists who have been coming from the bottom up, but I didn't know that it wasn't reciprocal.
I'm not aware of an approach to consult with farmers or to convene them.
It's not happening. No, you're consulting with Europeans, I know, because I see a lot of white people coming in.
We need to be in the belt.
That's where the GMO is coming in.
We need to be in Westmoreland doing door-to-door sort of, you know, this is what ganja industrialization potentially means. And these are the kinds of potential offers that will come our way. How can we approach this?
Final word to you.
I just want to say that the different parish association support. I'm looking forward to a national association coming from the different grassroots, the parish grassroots association that can dictate or tell the government what direction, because these are the ones who have been in her long time, you know, and that is what I in Westmoreland. Especially speaking specifically of Westmoreland.
Andrea, before you take us fully.
Yes, all right. Quickly,
I just want to say, on the 25th and the 25th of this month, we'll be having a monthly meeting in Darliston in Westmoreland, on 25th, and we're looking forward to ones-on-ones, being at the Nyabingi and in Scotts Pass on the 1st of November.
Just to address some of the attempts to organize a group of urban-based herb traders, people who use herb recreationally, have been meeting for just under a year. And
what do you mean urban-based?
Meaning mostly in Kingston, mostly that side of the city. We've called ourselves DAPA. Decriminalization, advocacy, and public awareness. Now that decriminalization is more in front of us, it's really more about public awareness and education. I'm saying this to say that we hope to make a formal launch in November of that association, which really seeks to gather different interests. Who, you know, the man who stick out him herb and sit down in his chalice camp with maybe 10 or 9 persons, he can be represented through such an agency. So I can say more about that in the future, but there are ways that we're
as I hear you talk,
prepare.
I'm thinking, the only thing I'm hearing in my head is organize and centralize, organize and centralize. And I'm wondering where the center is in terms of the different groups. Yes,
I
go ahead.
want to ask one question. Where is the real revolutionist? Are we going to sit down and take talk from these handful of people? Are we going to revolute for I&I rights?
Thank you very much, Prof I. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And this song we're playing for the government. Asking that I have that conversation about Jean-Claude Duvalier. We'll have that another time, but just to know that the dictator, former Haitian president, was made president at 19 and raped the country in the same way or even worse, just as vicious and as brutal as his father before him. He's dead. We're going to be going to the phone lines to speak with Dr. Glen Reynolds Cambell. She's consultant microbiologist and assistant lecturer. Going to be talking about chikungunya. And we do apologize to Dr. Reynolds Cambell. We're joining her a bit late in the program, but I know she understands. So we're going to be going to the phone now. Dr. Glen Reynolds Cambell, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us and for being so patient.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Right. Really appreciate your coming on this morning. As a microbiologist, you know, we're talking about chikungunya, and I just want our listeners at all levels to understand when we say microbiologist, what are we talking about? What is your specialty? What does it mean?
Okay, well, a microbiologist is someone who actually studies the organisms that cause disease in humans. So that can range from fungi to bacteria to viruses and even parasites as well.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that chikungunya as a virus would be right within your specialty.
Yes, we do look at the virus as well, chikungunya.
Right. 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, PAHO, in 2011 actually, PAHO along with the CDC published a document, which they put in book form and sent to the governments of the Caribbean, the different ministries of health and so on. And one of the things they were warning about in that booklet is the introduction of chikungunya into the Americas, and they were saying that it was imminent. 2 years ago, I conducted a few interviews actually, on the imminence of that and the extent to which Jamaica was prepared. At the time, we couldn't even pronounce the word chikungunya. We were just finding out about this. Well, it seems to me, though, that where there, and I've heard so many people say this, that where you have a new virus being introduced into a country, that preparedness to some extent, yes, but that you will have a high number of persons falling ill as a result of the virus. Is that true or not?
Yes, that's very true, because when you have a new virus coming in, it means that you have a naive population, meaning a population of persons who have never been exposed to it, so they have never mounted an immune response. And your immune response that produces antibodies to any infection is what actually helps you or prevents you from being infected with that organism again. So because it's never been introduced in our population, then we are still all susceptible to that infection.
Let me look at chikungunya as belonging to, because one of the things in the document from PAHO is that chikungunya belonged to a group of viruses, the Toga virus or Toga viride. You can probably tell me exactly what that is. But explain to me, what are the other diseases that resemble, look like, and operate as and present, similar to chikungunya, caused by mosquitoes?
Well, the Togaviridae family of viruses includes chikungunya as well as some others that are not common or seen in our region. For example, the Ras IV virus and the Semliki forest virus, which we don't have in our region at all. However, what we do have is dengue. Yes. And it does look exactly like chikungunya, however, it's not from the same family of viruses. It is, however, transmitted by the same mosquito. And as such, since we already have that mosquito being endemic in our region, then it follows suit that with the introduction of chikungunya, the vector is already there to actually transmit it now in humans.
Is chikungunya transmitted only by one type of mosquito, the Aedes aegypti, or is there other mosquitoes involved?
Well, the Aedes family of mosquitoes, including Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus, have been noted to actually transmit this virus.
So how come we've never heard about the
albopictus?
Yes.
That one is just another species of Aedes. However, it tends to prefer a little bit cooler climates, a temperate region. So this is the one that will be found, yes, in some other Caribbean countries, but also in the southern regions of America and even in some parts of South America.
One thing we're noticing now is that there seem to be quite in the U.S., well, in the Americas generally, we're talking a lot about diseases. The enterovirus, for example, in the United States has so far hospitalized over 570 odd people, children, with one or two adults, and has caused at least 2 deaths. 43 states in the U.S. involved in this epidemic, we have to call this, that's unfolding now in America. But when nobody's talking about this, why aren't we hearing about this enterovirus D68 in the same way we're hearing about chikungunya? The Minister of Health, for example, just warned in a most unprofessional way, I might say, the country, do not travel to West Africa. As a matter of fact, he said Africa first, which is frightening to me. But we have no, America is just on our doorsteps, and we have had no warnings from government to say to Jamaican who are traveling to the U.S. that there is a virus, enterovirus D68, very contagious, that's affecting over 500 and odd people right now, hospitalized, and this is spreading. People are paralyzed from this. Why do you think we're not hearing much about this?
Well, I'm not so sure as to why we're not hearing too much about this virus, but however, it comes from a group of viruses that are spread by the fecal-oral route. So if Jamaicans will ensure that they're actually following the usual protocol of hand washing and being careful about when they go to different places, that they follow these rules and regulations, that they don't in turn infect themselves, I can't say that we'll be completely protected, but the rate of transmission should be lower.
But we're traveling. As I speak now, I bet you anything if you go to the Norman Manley Airport and what the one in Montego Bay call again? Sangster. If you go to those airports right now, the people are traveling mainly to the US more than they're traveling to Africa, but we have a warning about Ebola and West Africa, which is, and I have the amount of miles, that we are from West Africa. Liberia is 4,634 miles from Jamaica, and the U.S. is just, a half an hour or 45 minutes, but we have no warning on that. I know you can't answer that question, but I'm just speculating about why we haven't been told about the enteric virus D68 when so many children are being crippled by it. Can you tell us about this virus? How does it present?
Well, this one, it's, as I said, it's a fecal-oral virus, meaning that it's spread when you contaminate your hands after using the bathroom, and then you get those hands into the mouth. And as you notice, it's commonly found in children who, in the school environment, preschool environment, might not be so keen as to washing their hands. And as such, when they play with other children or with other objects like their ball or, their toys, they're capable of passing on the virus between themselves.
Yes.
It can be associated with most viruses, they start out you can't really tell them apart. The child might have some fever, may have a sore throat, may just have general muscle pain, joint pain, but then nausea and vomiting can be associated as well as diarrhea. But in these children with this particular species, they've been noticing a lot of respiratory symptoms that can become so severe that they've sent some children to the ICU. The virus can also cause some kind of, meningitis picture where there's inflammation of the brain, and as such, these patients know they can in turn have some amount of paralysis resulting. But again, it's important to note that a lot of viruses can give you that kind of paralytic-looking picture. However, these viruses have been noted in recent times.
Yes.
This particular species was not one that was pretty common, but they've been noticing an upsurge in this particular one. As to why this one is now being so popular and passing around, I'm not too sure. However, they're doing their best to keep it under control, but again, we have to do our own part.
I think so. I think we should also let Jamaicans who are traveling to the U.S. with their children
be aware. We have to do our own part.
I think so. I think we should also let Jamaicans who are traveling to the U.S. with their children, artists, performers, entertainers, that there is a virus in the U.S. that is now affecting over almost 600 people hospitalized, that's affecting 43 states, and that it is spreading rapidly. It's the worst that they've seen it. I think we need to get that out there in the same way we're making up a stink about Ebola, which is a dangerous disease, by the way. All right, so let's go back to Chickungunia. So they're telling, how do you prevent Chickungunia? Can it be prevented?
Prevented? Well, so far I haven't got it, and I hope I don't.
Immune system must be very strong, Dr. Glen Cambell.
Well, I'm not too sure about that, but what I am sure about is that I am using my repellents, as they've been telling us to do. Use your repellents that contain beet. There are other substances too, like even lemongrass oil, eucalyptus, that we have been noting will actually repel mosquitoes. You also need to remember that you wear long clothing to cover up as much exposed skin as possible. Use your mosquito nets, use your screens at your windows, that kind of thing. The fogging that the government is doing is also very good in controlling the mosquito population, so there's less to bite us. However, we need to do our part as well in terms of looking around our homes and ensuring that we're emptying all the little containers that can collect water and for the mosquitoes to lay their eggs in. Even something as simple as the tray in which you drain your plate. Sometimes there's water collecting at the back that you don't notice, and the mosquitoes will lay in it. I've seen mosquitoes flying around toilets that are not used very commonly. So just cleaning, scrubbing, that kind of thing
One of
we also,
yes, go ahead.
I have a problem also with driving on the road and seeing people throwing garbage just everywhere in a time when our drains are being blocked, our gullies are blocked, and it results in stagnant water, which will breed mosquitoes in communities. So it's not necessarily the persons in the community surrounding that area of the gully that is blocked that are doing it. People upstream are doing it and it gets washed down. So I'm imploring Jamaicans to stop dumping garbage all over the place.
So
try and clean up your community as much as you can, because these are the things that will actually control the mosquito population.
Mosquitoes. It seems to me that there needs to be public education, not just in response to disease, but as an ongoing process that deals with, taking care of a community, taking care of cleaning your drains, cleanliness, and so on. It seems to me as if that is missing. But 2.5 years ago, since 2011, when I did that interview, one of the questions that came out of that was the need for public education so that persons would have been prepared for the Chickungunia virus by now and would have been told also how to clean up your communities, clean the drains, how to ensure that the mosquito population is at its minimum, because you can't really get rid of all the mosquitoes, can you?
It's a very hard task.
Yeah, well, it's difficult.
So you can control them.
But Dr. Reynolds Camp, let me ask you this, because it seems to me, I read in the PAHO document that the Chickungunia is not just spread by the mosquitoes, but there have been cases of transfer of blood, in terms of somebody who was infected with that, giving blood, and that blood transferred to somebody else. And there was also another case where a doctor was got stuck by a needle that he was using on a Chickungunia patient, and then he himself being infected. So that it's not just, it's a mosquito spread disease, but that it can also be had from blood transfusion, transfer of blood.
Well, that's the thing, because the virus, once it starts to multiply in the body and it's found in the blood, once it's present in the blood, if that blood product is directly introduced, as you say, through a needle or through an transfusion-like process, then it can happen that way. So even laboratory staff who might be working on samples, if they accidentally stick themselves as well, this is a probable mechanism of transfer, but the rates of this happening are very, very low, very slim. It hardly ever happens. What happens day to day is the mosquito transfer.
What about persons who have given blood, who had the Chickungunia virus, did not necessarily know at the time? Do we screen, do you know if we screen in Jamaica for Chickungunia in blood samples?
I'm unsure as to whether or not we actually screen at this time, but remember, nobody will be taking blood from a person who is actually showing symptoms of Chickungunia at the time for transfusion.
And do you have to be showing symptoms to be contagious?
Right. So you have what we call an incubation period, which is the time between the mosquito biting you and the time you're showing symptoms. During that time, you're not infectious. It's when you actually start showing symptoms that you're infectious. And somebody who's having fever and joint pain and very, very ill, that's when the load of virus in your system is so high that it can be transferred from a mosquito biting. However, the virus only stays in your system for about a week during that time. And as such, if you are to go and give blood sometime after that, then it's not likely that your blood would contain the virus. Those examples that were given in the document you're talking about were very, very rare circumstances.
Okay. There is another virus called the Niah, which comes with, it's a family of a Chickungunia, of the Toga variety, and it presents with swollen lymph nodes and so on. What interests me is that I hear so many people in Jamaica talking about swollen lymph nodes and stuff like that, fever and lethargy, fatigue. Could we have another virus operating at the same time that we have a Chickungunia, but not so sure about it?
Well, so far we're totally unaware of anything like that. And as I said, that virus isn't found in our region at all. However, Chickungunia can present with what we refer to as lymphadenopathy, where your lymph nodes become swollen, because some of the cells that the virus infects includes those immune cells which would actually take it to your lymph nodes so that your lymph nodes recognize it as a pathogen or something that it needs to get rid of and makes more immune cells to fight the disease. So you will find that while your lymph node is active and swollen, it's an indication that your body is actively fighting the infection.
What would you recommend that persons who are presenting with the symptoms of chikungunya, some of which you've named out here, that they do now? I know there's a rush on the hospitals. I know that there's a rush on the Panadol and the Cetamols and so on. And you talked just now about preventing the mosquito bites or reducing mosquito bites. But once you notice that you have the symptoms, what would you suggest?
Well, for persons who have recognized the fact that they're having symptoms, and in fact you need to now protect the rest of your family, you should be using a mosquito net if possible, and still continue to use your repellents because you don't want the mosquitoes in your home to bite you and transfer, because this is the time when you're now infectious, to transfer it to someone else in your home. The analgesics or the painkillers like your Panadol are excellent for helping with the pain. I can't see that it completely resolves the pain for everyone because some persons still complain of having pain, but you try to take the analgesics. There's no cure per se for chikungunya, but what we can do is try to ameliorate the symptoms. So if you're having pain, you take your painkillers, and most painkillers actually have that property of reducing your fever as well. So it will help to control the symptoms so you're a little bit more functional, but there isn't anything specific to actually stop the disease completely. Some persons who are having a rash with itching and that discomfort, we can have antihistamine agents like DPH that we can take, or Histel, as well as, your grandma always tell you about a little busy tea. A lot of persons are drinking their busy tea and having some relief of the itching with that as well.
And I've heard about the papaya leaf. Have you heard about that?
Yes, I've heard about papaya leaf as well.
Do you know if it really works?
Well, the thing is, a lot of persons can swear by a herbal medication as working, but then remember that for some persons, chikungunya is quite short-lived. So you're not too sure if it is that this person just got better, or if it is that it's whatever remedy you've taken that actually helped you to get better.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to say, because some persons it can last just 2 to 3 days, well, some other persons it can last a couple of weeks.
And that's interesting why, for some people it's, just a short time, 3 days and you're over it, and then for others, 14 days and you're still feeling like, death. So why does that happen? Why does it happen that way?
Well, it depends. Each individual is different. Each individual's immune system is different. Some persons will take a little bit longer to mount a good enough response to actually get rid of the virus and get rid of some of the symptoms that they're having. Also, persons who have underlying diseases like hypertension, diabetes, in cases where their immune system basically, let's say for diabetes more so, where immune system isn't really up to par, you might see that your symptoms might last a little bit longer. For the older patients as well, this might be a problem as well. And as for your neonates as well, may have a little bit more severe symptoms. There's also the risk of longevity of this disease, where it can become a little bit more chronic, because there are reports out of other countries where the joint pains and all of that might last months to years. So this is something that we need to be thinking about as well.
That's interesting. You said months to years. For some people, the pain that they're experiencing in the joints could last from months to years.
Yes.
In other words, for some people, they might never get over it.
Yes.
And when you say for years, that's interesting. For years, does it then mean that... say for the elderly, are some persons more prone to that than others, say elderly or children?
So persons who have underlying joint problems like arthritis, they've found that those persons are more prone to having longevity of the disease or chronic complications of the disease. The older you are as well, that's another risk factor. They say for females over 45 and males over 60, if you notice that your symptoms are ongoing for 3 or 4 months, then the likelihood of you having the disease continuing for years actually exists. However, this is a small percentage of patients. Not everyone will have this problem.
All right. Okay, so I know that people, more or less, you've been hearing this all over the news. I mean, it's everywhere, the symptoms, what to do, and so on. There's still a kind of a panic in the country. in the U.S. with the enterovirus, I noticed that there's not as much panic. Well, I suppose the information is out there, but I think the difference is that the public education that machinery seems to be in full swing in terms of people understanding what this is and so on, which is what is missing from our situation here. What would be, as a microbiologist, what would be your advice to persons in terms of whether to panic or not to panic? We have heard conversations about whether or not chikungunya causes death. Talk to us about that.
Well, so far from all the studies I've noticed, there have been very few fatalities associated with chikungunya. It's extremely rare, and it's usually in somebody who is very old or they have some other serious underlying medical condition. So the fatality rate from chikungunya is very low compared to something like dengue that's been in our environment for quite some time, which can, if you get a secondary dengue infection, it can progress towards dengue hemorrhagic fever or dengue shock syndrome. So the mortality rate from dengue can be much higher. In terms of what we can do to allay the panic, just continue to use your preventative measures. The risk of death, as I said, is low. If you continue to use your repellents and all of your mosquito control measures, then the risk of acquiring the disease and continuously spreading the disease can be even greater decreased. Another thing I've noticed in some literature is that they say that rats can actually act as a reservoir for the chikungunya virus. So even after our outbreak has kind of quelled and slowed down, if there are rats around acting as reservoirs, then we need to actually be ridding ourselves of these rodents as well, because it can cause another outbreak to start up.
Ridding ourselves of rats. So we really have, an entire, it's a process in terms of a cleaning up, because I know that this country is overrun by rats. It's not a joke. It's not even, funny. So that at the end of all of this, we expect that, and even while this is going on, we expect that we're also paying attention to the rat population in Jamaica in terms of getting rid of it. But what about persons who have chikungunya and turn up for work, turn up for, go to the market? I mean, they know they're ill, they might not have the kind of support that they have, but they're moving around just the same. What's the danger in that?
Well, the danger in that is that once you're still having symptoms, you're still infectious. So therefore, a mosquito biting you can actually transmit that virus to someone else once it's multiplied inside of the mosquito. So if you have to move around, because there are some persons who have no choice, try to wear repellents, try to wear clothes that cover you and leave as little exposed skin as possible, so that there's no, the risk of mosquitoes biting you is far reduced.
I just had an image of, the ladies who bleach.
Oh dear. You don't have to be that extreme, but well protected.
It's not funny, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist that. But in the heat, please wear long sleeves and trousers and so on, and socks if you have to. If you're wearing mini, dry it up to your knee. All right. But once you've had chikungunya, like dengue, can you get it again? Can it reoccur?
Well, if you get infected with one strain, and the thing is that there are 3 different types. If you get infected with one strain, you are immune to that strain. Currently, we estimate that the strain that's circulating is the Asian strain, or the Asian serotype.
What do you mean Asian strain?
Okay, so there's 3 different types. There's the West African, and the Asian, and the other one that we refer to as East Central and South African. All of that in one name, right? That's one genotype. And we think that this Asian strain is the one that's actually circulating in our region at this time. So if you are bitten with a mosquito that has this strain, and you had chikungunya before, then your immune system will be able to fight it off, so you won't get infected again. So you become immune to that strain. However, if you travel to somewhere else that has the other strains, then you're at risk of contracting chikungunya again.
Right, so you can get it 3 times, 3 different strains, but you won't get the same strain once you've had it. It's interesting that you just said Asian, because we tend to focus on Africa because of the name chikungunya, which...
Well, just because the name says Asian, it doesn't necessarily mean that it originated there. What happened is the
No, I'm
virus
talking about the origin, but I'm saying that there is, I mean, it's Africa and Asia. You know, when you read the literature, it's always Africa and Asia that's identified as a place where you have, you know, chikungunya endemic almost. But we don't talk much about Asia at all. We really talk a whole lot more about Africa, maybe because it's, you know, Africa is a beating stick all the time. It's easier to say Africa. But just so that persons know that it's not just Africa. And we've had outbreaks not just in the Caribbean, not just in Jamaica, but in, where else have we seen an outbreak of chikungunya?
Well, they've had a really bad outbreak in recent times. In, I think, 2008, they had one in Italy. In 2007, it was in France, and that French outbreak was probably associated with the large outbreak they had in an island called Reunion Island, which is actually a French state off the coast of Africa, which had an outbreak between 2005 and 2006. And then I guess persons traveling from that nation now to France, their motherland, helped to, you know, transfer the virus there. Before that, there were several other outbreaks throughout Africa and different regions of Asia and Indonesia, that kind of scenario in that region of the world. And the viruses have since then moved their way across the globe.
Does chikungunya cause death?
Well, as I said, it's very, very, the risk of death from chikungunya is very low, and it's only in those so far that have some underlying condition, or the thing is, with as you age, your immune system is less able to mount the kind of response that it would need to fight off certain infections. This is why, as you age, you might need booster vaccines. So just because your immune system is just not able to work the way it would. So as you get older, you're at risk of even more serious infection. So for where if I get bitten and an elderly person got bitten, the reaction might be totally different in the both of us, where they may have a more severe outcome. So they've noted that it's in the elderly folk that the risk of demise is greatly increased. And as I said, it's very rare that it happens.
And as you mentioned vaccine, and I know the context in which you mention it, but just so that there's no confusion, there's no vaccine for chikungunya.
Well, currently they are working on, I think, 2 different vaccines for this virus. However, they're not yet available because they're just in the initial stages of production.
All right, Dr. Glen Cambell, you've been very, very helpful. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry that I was firing the questions left, right, and center. But I know, you know, that a lot of persons are asking these questions. And I think even though we've heard so much about it, right now people are hungry for information, because this is where I think, and we're not blaming any one ministry, because I think this called for a more complex and multidimensional response than just one ministry. But this is where the state failed in the public education process. Information. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
No, well, I was saying at the same time, education campaigns have been ongoing in communities and health centers. Sometimes people just don't listen.
No, man, it's
or
a little bit too late.
Recognize the magnitude of what they're being told, and as such, they don't respond the way they ought to, and this is the end result.
No, they're a little bit too late. We reached out, you know, 2 years ago as media, and to help in the public education campaign, and nothing happened. So we know that it's a little bit late. But thank you so much, Dr. Glen Cambell. Really appreciate that.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Okay, you're inside of the Africa Forum, running Africa here in Jamaica. All right. I know we have just 6 minutes. Can we do this in 6 minutes? Maybe not. I hope we can. Student Minister Ishmael Muhammad, National Assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the son of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we have just 6 minutes, but he's just going to tell us what's happening. Minister Ishmael Muhammad, good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, my brother.
Good morning, my sister. How are you?
I am doing very well, and you?
I am very well, thank you.
All right, we're going to give you 6 minutes just to tell us what's going to be happening at the National Arena. I will not interrupt, but just to say that we're broadcasting live from there on the 19th. This program will be at the National Arena, broadcasting live. Go ahead, my brother. Give us an idea of where the plans are, what's going to be happening at the National Arena on the 19th of October.
Thank you, my dear sister. Indeed, it is a very great honor, privilege, and pleasure to come on the show and to announce and invite our wonderful people and family of Jamaica, the entire island, to join us on October 19th at the National Arena for the 19th anniversary of the historic and monumental Million Man March, which was held 19 years ago on the 16th of October in the year 1995, with nearly 2 million black men gathered in Washington, D.C., which was the first time that we, in our struggle for liberation and justice, ever went to D.C. to make a demand not on government, but to make a demand on ourselves to accept the responsibility as black men to do better by our communities, to be the protectors of our women and children, to be the providers of our husbands, and to accept the responsibility to be the builders of our own community. This historic gathering and the anniversary commemoration of that great day that God blessed us with, this is the first time that the anniversary has been taken outside of the United States and held on foreign soil. So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, being a son of the Caribbean, a son of Jamaica, who loves Jamaica, loves his family and people, decided to bring that anniversary commemoration to Kingston on the 19th of October, where he will deliver and bring the message of atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. A message of self-love to our people, a message of unity for our people, a message of self-sufficiency, and move us, God willing, in the direction of a united Caribbean, for it is only in our unity that we can have the strength that we need in a time like this of great, great uncertainty, great trouble in the world. And so Minister Farrakhan will bring that kind of message to Jamaica and from Jamaica to the rest of the Caribbean that lifts the vision of Marcus Garvey, who said to us, one aim, one destiny, one people. All of our problems that we are suffering from in Jamaica, in the Caribbean, in America, in Africa, in the Isles of the Pacific, wherever we find ourselves as black people on this planet, we find ourselves suffering from the conditions of injustice and inequality, oppression and tyranny. And we as a people have to move in a different direction than the one that we have taken.
My brother, I'm going to interrupt you a minute and just ask you to hold the line for me while we take a special feature, which will be about a few minutes. Can you hold the line for me and I'll come right back to you? All right, listen up. Top draw dollars, pick 2, cash pot, early bird draws are up next right here on IRE FM. Standing by for the pick 2, pick 3, pick 4 cash pot and early bird draws coming up in just a few minutes. We will, of course, return to...
Thank you so much for the privilege and honor as we extend this invitation this morning to Jamaica to attend a great, great event that is coming to Kingston on the 19th of October, and the return of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan to the island to deliver a message of unity, a message of reconciliation, and responsibility. Borrowing from words of Minister Farrakhan, brothers and sisters, the minister shared with us that he sees in the Caribbean, in today's global society, how the Caribbean as a productive element is being marginalized so that it becomes a playground for the middle class, the rich, the wealthy, and the super rich. And right now we see throughout the Caribbean how the wealthy and the super rich of Europe and America are buying a lot of land in the Caribbean.
And in some cases, not necessarily buying, but lands being made as gifts. And I know I'm going to be challenged on this, but I'm willing to be challenged to so many different persons. In particular, we see our land being given now to, and talk about acres and acres of land being used in deals with China in particular. One of the questions we've been asking ourselves this morning and asking publicly in this space, Minister Ishmael Muhammad, is what are we going to tell our children about the future? And you mentioned the concerns of Minister Louis Farrakhan in terms of where he sees the Caribbean going. It's becoming once again the playground for the rich and famous. For the 19th anniversary here on the island, what will be the focus of Minister Farrakhan's message? Can you give us an idea of some of what he will be sharing without giving away too much with the people of Jamaica?
Yes, my dear sister, thank you. The idea that the minister will bring is in that theme of reconciliation, atonement, and for us, dear sister, to accept the greater responsibility that is on our shoulders to give our children and the young a better future by moving them in a direction of self-sufficiency. As you just said and we talked about, we see how the Caribbean is being marginalized. And what is so dangerous about this land being taken from us and even citizenship being sold to foreign investors is that the land is slowly and gradually being taken from us, which means that we lose our sovereignty as a people. And then if we are not developing, as the minister has said and warned us as a people in America, in the Caribbean, and throughout the world, that if we allow this trend to continue and we don't move into industries where we can develop the land, and it is from the land that we have the wealth that we need and to build our economies and to provide jobs for our children so that our children will have a future. But we have to move now in a direction that ensures our people and give hope to our children, because violence that is on the streets of Kingston and throughout the Caribbean and here in the cities of America is born out of the hopelessness and despair that our young people feel. And wherever there is hope, there is life. And wherever there is life, there is love. So hopelessness right now in despair is how violence is bred. And hopelessness, as the minister has taught us, is the mother of violence. Mm-hmm. So his message is to give to our people hope. In his message is a vision. And in that vision is the hope that we need to work together in unity across party line differences, across differences in religion. But we are one people. We are brothers of each other, blood of each other, bone of each other. We come from a common root and a common struggle, and we can only make tomorrow better in our unity as a people. That's the message that our brother Minister Farrakhan brings to Jamaica. and to the Caribbean.
And we're looking forward to that. Once again, we just want to say to our listeners here in the United States, to those who are listening to us at irafm.net, that we will be broadcasting live this program. The Africa Forum will be broadcasting live from the National Arena on the 19th of October. We'll be there from 6 o'clock. We broadcast live, and then later in the afternoon, I think we'll be taking a part of a message, not all of a message, but we will be there on the ground on October 19th. My brother, give us an idea of what the day will look like at the National Arena for those persons who are planning now to be there. We know the message is a high point of the activities as we celebrate and rememory the Million Man March. What are some of the activities that will be taking place, and what will the day unfold like?
Well, the focus of the day, the main day, is the actual program and the keynote address of Minister Farrakhan. Of course, it would be preceded by wonderful scholars and speakers from Jamaica and from the rest of the Caribbean. But the main day is the message of Minister Farrakhan. The program starts at 2 p.m. and the doors open at the National Arena at 12. So there are no planned activities prior to our program start at 2 p.m.
All right, and we understand, and it's being reported widely in the media here in Jamaica, that there is a really large delegation coming in from the United States. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, we are very happy to bring many members of the Nation of Islam. Several hundred will be traveling from the different cities throughout the United States to join Minister Farrakhan in Jamaica. This will be the first time for many members of the Nation of Islam, their first visit to Jamaica. So, yes, we are looking forward as members of the Nation of Islam to be with our beloved leader and teacher, Minister Farrakhan, on the weekend of October 19th.
We're looking forward to that, too. One thing we can tell you, as a media house, we tried getting hotels in Kingston, and it seems you've booked it all up. So it's difficult to get a room in the inn, but it's cool. We're all right. We'll do fine. All right. So thank you very much.
Well, we hope that our presence will lend itself to giving great hope to our people, and we want to show our brothers and sisters the great message that God has given to us through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan, and we want to show Jamaica what repair looks like in the lives that have been transformed in a most positive way with the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that have made us new people, new men, and new women. And so we are looking forward to a great day and a great experience for all of our brothers and sisters in Kingston and throughout the island, that they will go away on the 19th inspired with great hope, with a vision that we all can work on and work with to bring into reality.
We're looking forward to that, and looking forward to meeting you and talking with you and Minister Farrakhan when you both come in to the island for the 19th anniversary of the Million Man March. Thank you very much, my brother.
Thank you, my sister. God bless.
All right, you too. All right, that was Student Minister and Nationalist Ishmael Muhammad, and he is the National Assistant to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's also the son of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Just about that time for news, and Halsheen Burke is standing by with that. Time on IRFM now 8:40.
This is news from IRFM, Jamaica's non-aligned news voice.
Good morning. I am Halsheen Burke with the local and international headlines. The St. Catherine North Police have declined to provide any details as to what caused the death of a man in their custody yesterday morning. The identity of the dead man has not been released, as police are yet to notify his relatives. Reports reaching IFM News are that a man facing sex offence charges was being held at the Glengoff police station. IFM News understands that the man was ill and the nature of his illness required that he wear adult diapers. Further reports are that at about 8 a.m. the man was found dead inside his cell. The Health Ministry is urging persons already infected with the Chickungunia virus to protect themselves against mosquito bites during their infectious period to avoid spreading the virus to others. Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Marian Bullock-Lucas says infected persons should take measures to reduce the chances of being bitten by mosquitoes. This includes sleeping under a mosquito net, using repellent, staying in a home which has screens on doors and windows, and covering their bodies as much as possible for at least 7 days after the onset of fever. Dr. Ducat said persons remain infectious for 7 days after the onset of fever. This means if a mosquito bites these infected persons, the vector will be able to spread the virus to others. Infected persons are being encouraged to limit their movements from place to place and to spray inside their homes to kill adult mosquitoes, especially during the 7-day period. A Clarendon man is believed to have drowned in a river in the parish yesterday. Dead is 26-year-old Delroy Wright of Canaan Heights. Wright's body was found afloat in the Rio Minnow. Reports from the Maven police are that about 7:15 a.m. residents saw the body in the river and alerted the police. Officers who responded retrieved the body and took it to the morgue. A post-mortem is to be conducted. The extensively refurbished and expanded Williamsfield Health Centre in Westmoreland was reopened on Friday by Health Minister Dr. Fenton Ferguson. The facility, which was upgraded at a cost of $8 million, is now able to accommodate more persons with its additional examination rooms and larger waiting areas. Financing for the project was provided by the National Health Fund. The Health Minister emphasized that primary health care must be seen as a priority of any government. In news overseas, Somali government troops backed by African Union forces have captured a key stronghold of Al-Shabaab Islamists. The regional governor told the BBC that he was in the center of Barare, south of Mogadishu. The government now controls all the seaports along the coast of Somalia, blocking off supply lines. The AU says Al-Shabaab, which had held the town for 6 years, used it as a base to launch attacks on the capital. Finally, fresh scuffles erupted between pro-democracy activists occupying central parts of Hong Kong and riot police as the protesters entered their second week. Thousands of people held a rally overnight defying the Beijing-backed authorities, although by this morning, many of the protesters had gone home. Yesterday, Hong Kong's leader warned that police would ensure government offices and schools reopen come Monday. And those were the local and international headlines. News next at 11:45. From the Area FM newsroom, I am Hal Shane Burke.
That was news from Area FM, Jamaica's non-aligned news voice.
Managed in Jamaica, the protection and management, and among other things. So we're standing by to speak with Mr. Basil Fernandez. Joins me on the phone lines. Mr. Basil Fernandez, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. I'm so happy that we could speak to you because my concern about watersheds in Jamaica came against the background of understanding now that, you know, the Roaring River lands might soon be sold in a way or used as part of a deal with China. So my concern mainly is
I don't think that is really true, though. You know, I think what has happened is that they have placed a request, but there's nothing to say that the request has been.
And that is why I said, may, yeah. Because we're not sure, and that is why we're starting a conversation. No, because I think
we don't know.
Right, we have no clue. Yeah. But the information is out there. It's in the newspapers, and we have spoken to. We did ask Mr. Ivan Anderson to come on, and he said the very same thing. He said, "Listen, the proposal is just on the table. We don't know how this is going to go." But that started me thinking as a journalist about watersheds, about our rivers, and our sources and so on. And I know Duns River is there. It's a resort area. I also saw in the newspaper that there are plans now to develop even further there as eco-friendly as possible. So that led me to think about watersheds, and specifically in the St. Anne, St. Mary area. What can you tell us about the area where the Duns River and Roaring River, White River, is that considered one single watershed management unit?
Yes, the entire St. Anne area is considered one large watershed management unit. The Rio Bueno White River Watershed Management Unit, WMU. Basically, it's part of the Dry Harbour Mountains hydrologic basin, and in this case, the basin and the WMU is approximately the same size.
Yes.
Now, one of the things we must understand about the boundaries for the basins and the WMU is that there are surface water boundaries. In other words, they are drawn using elevations in which flows all tend to go into one direction into the basin, and there are no flows that cross the boundaries of any of these basins or WMUs.
And WMUs, of course, watershed management units.
Management unit.
All right.
That group a number of small watersheds like Cave River, Duns River, Roaring River, all together for management purposes.
All right. Okay, so pardon me while we ask you some very simple questions so that our listeners at all levels can understand what we're talking about. What is considered a watershed?
Well, a watershed is an area that basically collects water, rainfall runoff into a system, such as a river or into a stream, whatever it is, basically.
In terms of what's the significance? What's the significance? What's the significance, and why are watersheds important?
Well, watersheds are important because, as it said, and I have always stated this, a watershed should shed water, nothing else. Because the idea of a watershed is that it provides a system for collection of water, which comes from rainfall, and all the rain and all the water we have in this island comes from rainfall, which is then broken down into surface and groundwater. But it provides an avenue for collection of rainfall that we then utilize in our daily life for health, sanitation, irrigation, industry, tourism, as a lot on the St. Anne area, for instance. So that's what it is. That's very important.
Right. And when we talk about the management of watersheds, what are we talking about? What happens there?
The management of watersheds has to do with the activities that take place within the watershed itself. There are certain activities which maybe you can carry out in a watershed and certain activities that you should not do in a watershed. One of the problems we have in most of our watersheds is the slash and burn technique of a lot of our farmers and persons who don't have land tenure but move from place to place, chop out some bush, cut down trees, plant a little cash crop, and then move on and let the place totally follow, and you end up with a big problem in terms of erosion. So bad agricultural practices and several other practices like the disposal of waste by people who squat in the watershed. And there are a number of cases like this in St. Anne, for instance, above Shaw Park and other places like that, where you do have a number of squatters who have no sewage disposal system and basically tend to do kiting and other things, which of course eventually runs off. While people throw it away from them, it doesn't go away if it comes back to haunt everybody else afterwards.
Wow. Do you think that there is enough public education that our people as Jamaicans, we know enough about the management of a watershed, about some of these our own practices that inevitably turn out to hurt us in the end in terms of the management of the watershed areas?
I really don't think so, not on a consistent and sustainable basis. I think there are spurts that we have. For instance, some years ago we had a Duns River watershed project which lasted for a number of months, in which we collected information and wrote about things that should be done. But I don't know that there was ever any implementation of a lot of the recommendations. This comes because of the lack of funding and the will to really implement a lot of the recommendations in this area. And again, it can be, in many instances, directly tied to the public education program, that people don't see that their actions have other actions that impact negatively on all of us, including themselves, when they do certain things in the watershed.
Right, and I think it's something that we really can't take for granted, you know, the importance of this, and I think media can play a role in this also,
That's right.
in the classroom, but definitely media can play a role in this. As I told you before, my particular interest this morning, it's really in the Roaring River and Duns River watersheds, and I know that they belong to a wider management unit, and this is not a judgment on anything, it's just a need to understand development around these areas and how that might affect sources of water or the extent to which, or the environment. And can you help us to understand that Duns River has been there for a very long time, functioning for a very long time? There was an article in yesterday's paper that they're seeking to expand and create a park area on the Duns River lands. What would be the environmental concerns there, if any, regarding such an expansion?
Well, I think I need to just speak a little bit about the hydrology of the entire Centan area so that you'll have a better understanding of what some of the impacts would be.
Yes.
The entire Centan area is a large limestone plateau. As you see, it extends all the way back southwards down to us, way down, and goes like to Alexandria and Brownstone and other places beyond that, and very high elevation. There are no rivers in that upper section of the Centan Plateau, the Dry Harbour Mountain. All the rain that falls goes into the limestone aquifer and then moves northwards underground towards the coastline. The Duns River and the Roaring River and the Cave River, which are in close proximity, just in the Ocherius area basically, are all fed by groundwater. In other words, by the rainfall that seeps underground, moves through the limestone, and comes up close to the coast. Now, all these rivers along the coast are very short rivers, and they are like that because along the Centan coast is a very low permeable piece of limestone that ponds water behind it. It acts like a barrier, like a dam, and it goes all the way underground. So it stops water from flowing out to sea, except along certain preferred pathways, and it keeps salt water out of the basin. So these rivers, when it ponds up, it rises to the surface, and you get all these little rivers. And if you look on the map and look at all the rivers you have in Centan, they are not long and coming from way up at the top. Like on the south coast where you see the Rio Minnow and the Rio Cobre and the Black River all come from long distances. They are very short little rivers, and they begin right at the boundary between the limestone aquifer and this impermeable limestone. Now, if you begin to have development on any of the land, upgradient of Duns River or Roaring River, you are, of course, going to affect what we call the recharge into the limestone aquifer. Now, that is the water that falls, the rainfall that gets down to the groundwater table and keeps the storage in the aquifer very high. Now, we have over the years not allocated water. This is a management tool that we have used. We have not allocated any water, any groundwater, significant groundwater, south of like all these rivers, because if you do that, you are going to be lowering the water table. And when you lower the water table, the spring line where the spring rises to serve Duns River, Roaring River, Cave River, etc., are all going to decline, and you're going to have problems in terms of flows in the rivers, and you may only get intermittent flow. So we have to be very careful in terms of the development that we put in, where it is put in, and basically the fact that we may be increasing runoff rather than allowing the recharge, the natural recharge, to take place.
So what would be, and you said this at the beginning, and we want to reiterate that the proposal from China is just a proposal that government is now looking at to acquire lands at Roaring River. The story I saw in the paper yesterday had a chance to talk to anybody about the plans for development, further development at Duns River, because that was just yesterday. So, but what would be your major concerns about, say, building a resort on the Roaring River lands and further expanding the Duns River lands?
Well, as I said before, the major concern would be, one, the impact on water storage and recharge to the aquifer. That would affect storage and flows to the Roaring River and to the Duns River. The Duns River, of course, is a internationally known tourism product that we have taken a decision to protect by simply not granting the licenses for abstraction of water from wells behind it. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing that could happen, is that you may have a reduction in the recharge, and you end up having lower flows in both the Cave River, the Duns River, and the Roaring River. Now, the Roaring River provides us with hydropower because there's a hydropower station on the pipeline that comes from the top of the Roaring River and provides the head to generate electricity on this turbine. Now, the water comes out at the sea and goes down into the sea. I have been advocating for some time that we need to move that turbine from the right along the coastline and put it on the other side, to the south side of the North Coast Highway, so that when the water comes back out of the hydropower plant, we can pick that up for use in domestic purposes, and even send it back into the upper reaches of the central area. That's something that we have to look at also. The other thing is, when you reduce recharge, you increase runoff, because you have more paved area within a resort development. Having increased runoff, you can increase the flood potential of an area, the flood risk to anybody downstream of that. So along the coast, you may get more water going into the coastal zone, which may take a lot of particulate material, soil, other material that is used, oil and grease, hydrocarbons that will be coming out of the resorts. That will go into the coastal zone and may affect the reefs offshore, which basically provides the beach that makes the North Coast so attractive to tourists. So there are a number of factors that we have to look at environmentally, in terms of dealing with any resort development inside there. If you can have a resort development that is environmentally friendly and very sustainable, but it's something that has to be planned, and it's something that has to be carefully considered and implemented.
Because we have seen the Mystic Mountains just next door to Duns River.
I can't hear you.
We did have an interruption. I'm hearing you very well. Are you hearing me, Mr. Fernandez?
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Okay, we did have an interruption. I heard that. Yes. I was saying that we have seen Mystic Mountains next door to Duns River. They seem to be pretty eco-friendly in terms of how they're built there. And now, so we're hearing about an expansion, and then on top of that, the possibility of whether or not a resort will be built there. The Roaring River also serves because there's a water commission treatment plant at the Roaring River on those lands, isn't there?
No, I don't think there's not on the Roaring River. It's on the Cave River. It's at Bogue.
It's at
Bogue. It's just on the other side of the Duns River, going towards Oteria.
Okay.
In fact, you go up the same road that you go into Duns River.
Exactly.
And you go to the Bogue treatment plant.
Right. So, but isn't that all one land, though, in terms of the geology?
Well, yes, it would basically be like different small catchments, but that's why we put them together as one.
Yes.
And call it a WMU for management purposes, because you can't just manage one small piece. At that time, you have to manage the entire thing in totality to give you a more integrated approach to the management that you take in looking at the entire area. Because anything you do in any of those areas is going to have effects in other areas also.
Can you tell me if the Roaring River currently serves any community in terms of domestic water?
No, it doesn't. That's as far as I know. As I said, it only serves the JPSCO hydropower plant, and there is a license granted to Sandals at the way down on the beach where the water comes to take some water from there for utilization in the hotel property next door.
What as you know, the managing director of the Water Resources Authority, what would you want, not just people in the area, but Jamaicans in a form of an action learning or action research kind of situation, to be thinking about and talking about and discussing, not necessarily cussing, because we tend to cuss when we hear things. There's a proposal from China on the board for these lands. We have wider concerns about the land itself, but in terms of the Roaring River, Duns River and so on, what are some of the issues that Jamaicans should be talking about going into this? Because I know the thing was made public so that we could begin to have a conversation on this.
Well, I think what we'd like to see is NEPA has a responsibility for watershed management, but we work in an integrated fashion in terms of collaboration between all the agencies, forestry, NEPA, Land, National Land Agency, Water Resources Authority, NWC, etc. What I would like to see is, as you mentioned earlier, the issue of communication, meeting with communities that are impacted, or that small communities that reside or depend on the watershed for a living, to look at how this works that they do in the watershed can be made sustainable and not impact negatively on the watershed. And just as how people have been saying that you should not do X, Y, and Z in the capital country, then maybe we need to look at St. Ann and all the other areas and say these are things that we should not be doing, and we need to be protecting them, and to have all the agencies in on the communities in terms of the communication strategy and education and a public awareness as to what their role is, how their actions, what kind of actions they take, how they impact negatively on the watershed and on water supply, because they are going to be dependent on water supply. And we have to look at it from that point of view. But I think we certainly need to have a more integrated approach in terms of working with all the various communities. Now, some years ago, there was an NGO group. I'm not sure what was the name, but it had something like a herd or something.
At the top of Duns River, you're talking? Yes. I think RUOC or something to that effect. Yes, I know which group you're talking.
Right.
Yes.
And we worked with them in development of certain things, and they were looking at certain ecotourism projects.
Yes.
But I haven't heard anything of them for the last year. I don't know if there's no funding. And this is one of the problems, is that sometimes NGOs are set up, they get a little bit of funding from an international agency. Once the funding runs out, there is no continuity of the project, and basically there is no further work that is being done. And we have seen this in so many other areas, and that is a major problem.
Yes.
What we ought to be doing is government agencies have more technical skills, and I think why we can't access the funds because they're a government agency. I think when the NGO access the funds, it would be very prudent for the NGO to come to the government agency and seek technical assistance and guidance as partners in the project, not necessarily for money's sake, but basically for technical information, guidance, and using the technical skills that are available to ensure that your project is environmentally friendly and safe, and it's sustainable and can carry itself in the long run.
I think part of the ignorance, I think, comes from not even knowing how you're impacted by a particular watershed management unit.
Right.
I myself was surprised when I heard that the entire management unit was Rio Bueno, as opposed to say Roaring River, etc. So, and in doing the research, I was kind of surprised also to find the amount of communities that would be affected should something go wrong with Duns River or Roaring River or Cave River. So the information is not there. There's some ignorance, which is really not bliss in this case. How many watershed areas, management units, do we have in Jamaica?
26.
26.
Yes, we have grouped a whole series of small watersheds together into 26 management units across the island.
And you know, I'm going to invite you in the studio very soon, Mr. Basil Fernandez, if you can, so we can have persons call in and ask you questions about these areas. Just talking to you just now, it was very revealing in terms of even the communities that would be affected if something goes wrong at the Roaring River.
It's the communities being affected, but also the things that the community does that impacts on the community itself and other persons outside of that community, because the impact may not be confined just to the community, but be wide outside of the community.
Exactly.
So I think the community needs to understand what its role is and what it does, how that impacts on the overall management and the output of water as well as sediment, and allowing sustainable development to take place within the watershed.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, so you can answer or not answer to this question. Would you be comfortable with resort development on the Roaring River lands?
Well, it depends on what is the nature of the resort. I have not seen the area to be allocated. I have not seen the nature of what the development is. And as you said before, it's a distinct possibility that it may not even be the request may not be acceded to. So, as I said earlier, you may have developments that are sustainable, and it depends on how they are put together and how they are operated and implemented.
And water cannot be, we don't have to worry about our water sources, do we? Regardless of whether or not the land is sold.
Well, we do have to worry about our water.
No, I'm talking about it being privatized.
Change also. That is something that we have really discussed, but climate change is going to have a big impact on our demand for water, on our watersheds, for instance, and other things. So we have to take those factors into consideration. And I think part of the communication and awareness strategy that we have to put to the community is to point out to them just what action they can take to mitigate the impact of climate change. And both themselves, in terms of increasing use of water, more efficient use of water is going to be needed. And water is a finite resource, and we have to be careful in terms of how we use it. And right now we're in a state of surplus. We do have more water, especially in Zentan, than we actually need, but we have to use it wisely and care for it. Otherwise, we are going to be in a situation like a lot of our Caribbean neighbors where they are in a negative position and cannot meet their water demand.
Mr. Basil Fernandez, I'm so sorry we're out of time. Really wanted to talk to you some more, but thank you so much, and we're going to continue this conversation. We're giving to you the Water Resources Authority, NEPA, whoever, all the different agencies, because I noticed the Forestry Department and many other agencies are involved when it comes to our water sources and the management of water here in Jamaica. So that we're giving to you the space and IRFM to assist with the public education about watersheds in Jamaica.
I'd be willing to come down sometimes, spend a long period answering questions, have some maps that people in the studio can see, and other things that you can see exactly what the situation is.
Okay, brilliant. We'll stream that live when you come. Thank you so much. All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
You too. That was Mr. Basil Fernandez, Managing Director of the Water Resources Authority. As critical thinkers, we tend to think ahead and to think deeper into power structures and so on, and we tend also to follow the money. I have been following China in Africa very, very closely. I mean, really, really closely in every single country on the continent of Africa. And China has been engaging in a model, which is the Angola model. It worked very well in Angola, and so it is being replicated in many countries across Africa. We see it at work here also in Jamaica. China calls it a win-win for China and a win for the country in which they're operating. And so part of this is, in Angola, they, give Angola loans at very, very low interest rates, and then lower than the IMF and the other Bretton Woods groups do. And, Angola can use these loans however they want, and all the countries can do. But many countries determine that they're going to build infrastructure, roads, buildings, and so on. And the repayment, China doesn't want money. In a lot of cases, do not ask for money. They ask for resources instead. In Angola, they ask for oil. In Jamaica, they're asking for land. We're hearing now that they have now requested, as part of payment, I'm quite sure, the Roaring River lands. How many acres of that, we are not sure. There are 800 acres, I think, for my research on the Roaring River lands. You know, they start right next door to Dunn's River and extend all the way back, adjoining Marmy Bay. And we just heard a little bit about the water sources in that area. So we have questions, and while we're saying that we must leverage China-Jamaica relations, and there's ambivalence, you know, and ambivalence doesn't necessarily mean that you are against something. What ambivalence does, it tends to drive you to ask questions, and for some people it tends to, you know, put you in a state of paralysis. For me, I ask questions when I'm not sure about what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, and the thing is to understand it. There's also the issue of land in Jamaica, crown lands, so-called crown lands, land ownership, the issue of lack of housing and so on. And so the question that came to my mind when I saw the request in the paper from China for the Roaring River lands, what are we going to tell our children about their future? We have to ask that question just before we sign off on the lands. We have to ask that question if we're signing off on water sources, too. I don't know. Can we sign off on water sources? What is the law regarding that? Is another question. So I do have questions, and we're asking them, and I implore you. I know that our attention is chick-verted, so we're thinking only of Chickungunia. But while we're thinking of Chickungunia, life goes on, and there are a lot of other things happening. For example, the government of Nigeria has signed an agreement with China to assist with medical treatment in areas identified by the Federal Health Department in Nigeria, medical protection and treatment in the fight against Ebola. 262 million nairas. In Zimbabwe, $3 billion deal with China, with Russia. Zimbabwe has signed a $3 billion with the B dollar deal with Russia for platinum mines. The Obama administration has threatened further sanctions on Zimbabwe if they do not pull back on this $3 billion platinum deal with Russia. So China is engaging in Zimbabwe. So too is Russia engaging with Zimbabwe. These are stuff that are happening that might be missing us as we talk about Chickungunia and Ebola and so on. We understand today that the Malaysian Flight 370, the search for the flight resumes today. New equipment, some $60 million between Australia and Malaysia. Sensitive equipment they're using. We told you earlier that Jean-Claude Duvalier died at 63. He was a dictator of Haiti. We'll talk about him another time. And there is talk of there's talk of HIV being now the origin of HIV now being identified as the DRC. But of course, the research shows that this is tied into the Belgian Congo and the Belgians in the Congo building the railroad. Interesting that they haven't gone further to trace that to Belgium. Is a Pan-African that he must not be so reactive as to make a public pronouncement against travel to Africa. Travel to West Africa, yes, which he said later on in his statement. Travel to West Africa, yes. But when you talk about Africa, you have to know that Africa is a continent and not a country. Let me give you some stats. From Liberia to France, direct line from Liberia to France is 2,839 miles. From Liberia to South Africa, listen closely, it's a 3,338 miles. Now, Liberia to France, 2,839 miles. Liberia to South Africa, 3,338 miles. I'm saying that because West Africa is nearer to Europe than it is to South Africa. Understand that Africa is one of the largest continents. It's right up there. Big, big, big. From Liberia to the United Kingdom to England is 3,211 miles. From Liberia to the UK is 3,211 miles. Liberia to Kenya is 3,297 miles. Liberia to Spain is 2,381 miles. Liberia is closer to Europe. Many other countries. Italy, 2,799 miles. Closer than it is to South Africa, closer than it is to Kenya, about the same distance as Chad, a little bit less, you know. So Africa is not a continent, and stop the scaremongering, telling people do not travel to Africa. If you go to Africa, do you know what's happening now in Africa? Who's traveling to Africa? The entire U.S. Congress all over Africa. There's a flight from Texas every day right to Guinea because of oil. Right, the mercenaries are there in the Congo digging out with diamonds, and the politicians, the conglomerates, the big businesses, the flights have not been suspended from the United States, the UK, or anywhere in Europe to the continent of Africa. Africa is a continent. It's a continent. So be careful. At the same time, we say and agree. All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum, Running Africa. And joining us on the phone lines, Professor Vereen Shepard, Chair of the National Reparations Commission here in Jamaica, also Vice Chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. We're talking about reparations this morning and the fact that the National Reparations Commission report was tabled to the House of Parliament in September. Professor Shepard, good morning. Welcome to the Africa Forum once again.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning to all your listeners as well.
All right, Vereen, just ahead of the reparations conference in Antigua, news has come that the National Reparations Commission report was tabled to the House of Representatives in September. Tell us a little bit about that report. First of all, Vereen, and I know this is going to take quite some time. I'll give you a few minutes to go through some of the main highlights of the report itself.
Okay. So we started by introducing the two commissions, 2009 and 2012, and the work that they were able to do. We then made the case for reparation using the history that we know, and we paid honor to all the people who have in the past kept this work going, because we did not want to give the impression that this is a new issue and that we are the ones who have pioneered this issue. We paid all the respect necessary. We then looked at precedent, all the people who have had reparation extracted from them, or people who have been paid reparation. Then we looked at the suffering of our people, made the connection between the past and the present, because people don't understand that the creaking health system, poor education system, and all the diseases and all of that we're suffering has a link. We also tried to make the link in terms of the demographic history of Jamaica and the link between our people and people in the continent of Africa, because there are people who still do not make the connection. They don't think that those ancestors were part of their family, and therefore they are disconnecting.
Yes.
Then we locate our recommendations within the context of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action and the CARICOM Reparatory Justice Program. And then finally, we, in our recommendations to the government of Jamaica, remember that we got terms of reference.
Yes.
Therefore, we have to stay within the terms of reference. Maybe civil society will see it differently, but we had to stick within the terms of reference given to us by the two governments, the two regimes.
Can you give us an idea of the terms of reference, remind us?
Yes, well, really it was to have public education around the issue.
Yes.
To suggest the diplomatic initiatives, to suggest the forms that reparation should take, and to advise the government on the case for reparation. So we did all of that. We have not completed our work, though. I just want to stress that.
Yes.
This report, part of the terms of reference also was to provide a report to government within 18 months of being formed. The first commission did not do that because they had stopped working because of lack of funds.
Yes, I recall that.
We didn't have funds either, but we continued working. We now have some funds to complete the public hearings because that is really critical. So Barry Shavans and his committee had done 5 parishes. So we have the other parishes to do with some money from the Chase Fund now. We will be able to do that. Then there'll be the final part of the report, which is to gauge public opinion on this issue. Okay? Yeah. In the meantime, however, this report can stand by itself because there's enough in it for the government to take action, meaning have a debate in Parliament and have the matter aired in the Jamaican space because this was interrupted in 2007 when that debate in Parliament stopped. But I want to make it clear that there are 2 sets of recommendations here in this report. One, internal reparation. We are saying, like other countries in the region, that there are some things that our governments can do because they are responsible for some of the issues, the negative issues in our society right now.
Yes.
And then we say, look at the external reparation strategies. So that's how the report is organized.
There has been some pushback from different areas of a society on the reparations, on the report that was submitted to Parliament, and it seems to be part of that. I would suppose is ignorance, just from reading. I noticed an article written by Lord Anthony Gifford that really answers one of the pushback, which was from Peter S. Peter. I think he dealt with it very, very, very well, and I'll tell people to go read both of them. It's good to read both of them because a lot of people have the same kind of issues that Peter S. Pew wrote about. Do not give them 1 red cent. And then the answer by Lord Gifford, I think, is really good in that it puts things in perspective pretty well.
Yes. Lord Anthony Gifford and I collaborated on that piece because we thought that Peter S. Pew missed the point. First of all, we have not reached the point of recommending who should oversee whatever reparation agreement is reached. Because his view about who should implement, I didn't understand that. Obviously, he didn't read through the entire report, and I kind of find it interesting that somebody, maybe I shouldn't say, but anyway, we didn't make that recommendation. And we are waiting after the conference. The CARICOM Commission will have a position on this, and we'll work within that.
So the fact that somebody of his caliber, made that assumption, obviously didn't read the report, that the recommendation is being made for what money to collect, who to get money, and who to put the money out.
Yes, but I think he's responding to the fact that we do talk about debt write-off, but then we're not alone in saying that. All reparation commissions have been saying that all over the world. The Durban Declaration and Program of Action, the JAR and the Jamaica Reparation Movement, when they were in place with our sister Barbara Blake Hanna, that's one of the recommendations everywhere: debt write-off, debt cancellation, technology transfer, these kinds of things, but also illiteracy eradication. We suggest a legal strategy should the negotiations not work. We talk about repatriation. We talk about debt write-off. We talk about starting a discussion about restorative justice. And we say, begin the discussions now with Spain and the UK for compensation for historic injustices and discuss with them the strategies needed for the return in current money of what they extracted from our people, repatriation to Africa, and who should to fund that, social infrastructural development, building of a slavery museum, and other tangible signs of memory, and we go through all of this. So the other pushback you would have noticed is about the money.
Yes.
Because there was a big sensational article about that. But if we don't have time to do that, let me say quickly that I'm surprised that no journalist is picking up on the internal reparation that we are talking about. For example, settle internal claims against Rastafari and Tivoli Gardens.
I think what it is, Professor Shepard, is that I don't know that people are reading the report, and well, I haven't read it yet myself, and that's because I was ill. But I'm about to read it as soon.
I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're feeling much better.
Yeah, just over exhaustion, Vereen. But I don't think that people are really reading anything to do with reparations, and so that we're not getting the kind of understanding that you expect is not coming, and that is why the public education in the different parishes and using the media is going to be so important.
And that's the next step we're going to embark on as soon as we come back from the conference. But I want to say that we talk about declaring a National Slavery Holocaust Commemoration Day. We talk about adopting reparation as foreign and domestic policy. We talk about addressing the current state of landlessness amongst the people of Jamaica, address the issue of lack of access to beaches. In other words, we talk about, and we also talk about the facilitated debate in Parliament, and through dialogue with the Minister of Education, introduce a Jamaican education curriculum related to the interconnection of the effects of the transatlantic trade in Africa and slavery and colonialism. We talk about access to the beaches and the disrespect that exists with the Jamaican people. But we also say, while you're doing that, also start negotiation, and if that doesn't work, go to court. So these are our recommendations.
Yes, brilliant. Really. Just listening to you and glancing through the report. One of the things we're going to do once the conference in Antigua has wrapped up is to come back and have a proper conversation about the report, line by line, as my father used to say, precept upon precept, and go through it as part of the public.
And hopefully maybe with a panel discussion with other members who contributed to the report. It's not my report.
Exactly, we know that. And so that's a plan that we think we need to go forward with. But what does it mean, though, at this time that the report is tabled in the House? What are we to understand? What does that mean?
Well, it means that pretty soon they will start a debate in Parliament. Well, they could also, after that, have a parliamentary subcommittee to take the issue further.
Okay.
So we'll have to be guided by Minister Hannah, who first got cabinet, presented a report to cabinet. It was accepted at cabinet, got the go-ahead to rename, and we have been renamed, by the way. We're now the National Committee for Reparation, in line with the directive of the CARICOM Reparation Commission, that all national bodies should be called committees and leave one commission, which is the CARICOM Reparation Commission. So that was done, and then she got permission to table it in Parliament. So, but I'm happy whether the news in the media is negative or positive. The fact is that, Cabo, we have never seen this kind of public exposure of the reparation issue.
True.
And to me, publishers always tell authors, no news is ever bad. No publicity is bad.
True, yes.
So let it go out there. But I just plead for journalists to have greater understanding of it. I don't see why people are so upset about assigning a figure, though, because all other reparation settlements have been financial. We did not say we're going to the government of Great Britain to pay 2.3 trillion pounds. We did not say that. What we said is that there are different strategies that are being discussed globally on how reparation should be settled. One of them comes out of the United Kingdom itself, led by Robert Beckford, and the participants were bankers, actuaries, economic historians like David Richardson, and so on. A high-level group of people. And they set out as a method, a model for calculation. And so we put that in there for those people who are interested in that. Because in any case, even if you're going to say you're talking about social infrastructural development, you will have to assign a figure to that package.
Yes.
So I don't know why we're so hung up on, well, why are you putting that out there and so on, which I've seen in the media.
Yes, I've seen that too. And the thing, and I'm going to go right back to my point. I think part of this has to do with the ignorance. So one thing to do is to take some time to read the report. That's the first thing.
Yes, and I think they can get it from Parliament.
Right. And the second thing is, what the committee is about to embark on, the public education sessions, I think will go a long way in changing things.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Shepard. I'm totally over.
And thank you for this time. Yes, thank you.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Professor Vereen Shepard there, who was speaking to us about the Reparations Commission report, the national...
This is Clive, a.k.a. Chris Zogo, Well, you can give me a minute to make a talk to your listeners, Yeah, man, this, you're talking to Muta listeners from Jamaica, US, Britain, and the world, especially the one them that on YouTube and BS and Roman channel. For over 20 years, Muta, I highlight problem them and I get solution. But, I see black people, but Muta alone can't do it alone, But all we do, as them listeners, we do, we talk and we complain amongst ourselves. And pass blame and with the government, white man, rich man, and Jah and Jesus to solve them. Black people, say, and a responsibility that other people solve them problem, And say, the man we have been put by his neck, now take it off and let you lick it off and pump him in the face and step in a fin short. Government has do good, because you see them a drive Pajero, and the regular artists, them alright, because them don't make it. And I see them a pop champagne, flat BMW, and I be a big mansion, but, them not be no factory for employ. The problem that I face, working and poor class, don't affect them. I can't believe how fool on the be, they're wait for same people who cause the problem to fix it. We complain about foreigner, buy up Jamaica, but instead, we buy up Jamaica, we buy up foreign goods. You don't know where the things say then get the money from. I see your money when you buy them goods then use back and come buy up Jamaica to use against you. They complain about Monsanto, but we shop at the supermarket all the time. And we don't even try to create our own supermarket that we sell our own organic food. So we leave it up to them to solve our problem with them create. Marcus Garvey say, if we can't do what other races do, we don't deserve to die. And that is exactly what happened to me right now. If you can't own the wholesale like the China man, you don't deserve to stay poor and jobless. If you can't own the multinational like the white man, you don't stay at the bottom of the political and economic system and big IMF. If you can't own the big farm like Monsanto, you don't deserve to die from cancer and death of famine. Muta give you no solution to your problem. But Muta, you alone don't have the money to solve a big problem, So if we put the money together, we can create the big man, big corporation, or big business that will represent our interests and agenda to work to solve our problem. I say, we don't say already, if 1,000 Muta listener put $1,000 US, that's $1 million US, 100 million Jamaica can set a foundation, start a business. We are going to invest in building and expanding black business like farm, supermarket, car creator, transportation, etc., which will provide wealth and jobs amongst our own by ourselves. Talking and complaining is good, because they highlight the problem. But it's time to build business and structure to solve the problem that we complain about so much. Every race have them structures set up. That is why you can see Chinese come from China, set up shop, and start it out with all Chinese meal. All of that man know to do is just be a buyer. You can't even blame the Chinese, because they're not doing it for yourself anyways. My solution, I know the be all and all, but it's one thing that is in your power to do and can create a system that will outlast us all alive now, Muta is the only man in Jamaica I feel that is trustworthy. That is why I'm willing to invest $1,000 US in him to set up a business to build our system. There must be at least 1,000 of him listeners who believe in real self-reliance. If not, I guess Black Jamaican is doomed to want to be beggars. $1,000 I don't know, you know, why? Because, you know, Jamaicans spend more than that on ganja, liquor, bleaching cream, clothes and car and big house, etc. In overconsumption. If you don't have 1,000, then you know what? Can get 10 people to join you as one then. So we want all the serious Muta listeners them to email muta@irfm.net. Call up and tell them say, oh, you're ready to invest in IM to build a phone system. So that me want to the people in Muta.
Blessed man, give thanks. That sounds serious. That sounds